Hi everyone, welcome to the Regular Rampage channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be looking at regular show villain lore. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, let's begin. Garrett Bobby Ferguson. Mordecai and Rigby just wanted some respect. They were tired of getting paid in sandwich baggies full of coins. Tired of kids on skateboards knocking them over and calling them losers. Tired of being nobodies. When those same skateboard punks started dominating the arcade game at their local coffee shop, getting free donuts and everyone's admiration, Mordecai saw an opportunity. Beat them at their own game, literally, and finally earn some recognition. The game was called Broken Bones, a motorcycle stunt simulator where you rack up points by landing tricks without shattering every bone in your body. The kids were good, posting a score of 700,000 that had the whole coffee shop treating them like celebrities. Margaret, the girl Mordecai had a crush on, was part of that admiring crowd. So when the kids laughed at Mordecai's sandwich baggie of coins and called him Gramps, despite being in his 20s, he put his quarter down and declared he'd take them on. Mordecai's first attempt was a disaster. He somehow managed to get negative points, which shouldn't even be mathematically possible. The kids laughed, the crowd dispersed, and Mordecai looked like an even bigger loser than before. That's when Mordecai made his declaration. People respect you when you're good at something, and they were going to get good at Broken Bones. The training montage showed Mordecai and Rigby figuring out the game's mechanics through trial and error. They discovered that combining Mordecai's joystick control with Rigby's button mashing created massive point combos. They practiced obsessively, ignoring Benson's calls about cleaning bathrooms. When Benson demanded they return to work immediately or be fired, Rigby grabbed the walkie-talkie and told him they deserved more respect, then threw the device in the trash. As they improved, something shifted. A guy named Jack Farley started watching them play and gave them his card. It literally said, "Jack Farley thinks you're awesome," on it. The kids who'd mocked them started paying attention. Other players gathered around to watch. Mordecai and Rigby were climbing the ranks, posting higher and higher scores, until finally they approached the world record itself, 1,275,640 points, held by someone with the initials GBF. The rematch with the skateboard kids became a redemption story. Mordecai and Rigby destroyed them. Margaret ran up and hugged Mordecai. The crowd cheered. And then their score ticked past the world record mark, hitting 1,279,000. For one brief moment, they'd achieved what they set out to do. That's when the ground started shaking. A beam of light shot down from a storm cloud, crashing through the ceiling of the coffee shop. Everyone backed away as something emerged from the light. A massive, disembodied floating head with a giant beard. Rigby made the obvious observation. It was a giant bearded face. The head turned around, revealing the letters GBF printed on the back. Garrett Bobby Ferguson had arrived. GBF was quick to correct them. The initials stood for his name, Garrett Bobby Ferguson, though giant bearded face was technically accurate. He seemed almost casual about them breaking his world record. That's because the world record meant nothing compared to the universe record, the highest score achieved anywhere in the entire cosmos. That record was 1,279,001, just 1 point higher than what Mordecai and Rigby had scored, and GBF held that record too. Mordecai challenged him to a head-to-head match right then and there. One game, winner takes all, for the universe record and all the respect that came with it. GBF sprouted arms and legs from his floating head body, which was deeply disturbing to witness, and accepted the challenge. The game started in Mordecai and Rigby's favor. Their score climbed steadily while GBF struggled to keep up. Then something unexpected happened. GBF started crying. Actual tears rolled down his giant face as he begged them to let him win. He claimed he'd devoted his entire life to Broken Bones, playing so obsessively that his wife left him. The crowd murmured in sympathy. Mordecai felt conflicted. Rigby's response was immediate. No way were they throwing the game. But GBF cried harder, and the sympathy from the crowd grew louder. Mordecai made the call. They'd do the right thing and let GBF have his record. They let go of the controls and let their score freeze at 1,250,000. GBF's tears stopped instantly. He started laughing, a cruel, mocking laugh. Everything about his sob story was a lie. He'd never devoted his life to the game. It was just a hobby. He never had a wife. He'd manipulated them completely. The crowd started booing, but GBF didn't care. He invoked universe rules. There are no rules. Cheating, lying, manipulation, it all counted as legitimate strategy on a cosmic scale. Mordecai realized they'd been played, but GBF was still playing and could still lose. They started trying to distract him, chanting "Broken Bones" over and over. The crowd picked up the chant, and then something incredible happened. Even after GBF beat their score, the game kept going. There was still time on the clock. Mordecai and Rigby rushed back to the controls. GBF panicked. He started physically grabbing them, trying to pull them away from the arcade cabinet. Rigby bit GBF in the shin. Mordecai kicked him in what would be the groin area. GBF shouted, "Ow! My chin!" With GBF momentarily stunned, Mordecai and Rigby executed a perfect sequence of moves, and their score shot past 1,300,000. The moment their score locked in, GBF screamed screamed, "No!" and exploded. His entire massive body detonated like a bomb, covering everyone in the coffee shop with white brain matter. The crowd stood there in shock, then erupted into cheers. They'd actually beaten the universe record holder. Then Benson showed up, also covered in brain goo. He explained that he'd thought about what they said about deserving respect, and he'd come to give them actual paychecks instead of bags of coins. But now that he was covered in the exploded remains of a cosmic entity, he'd realized his mistake. He started ripping up the checks, his gumball machine head turning red with rage. If they wanted to waste their lives playing video games, that was their choice. But they could never do it on his time again. GBF established something crucial about Regular Show's universe. There are cosmic consequences for everything, even arcade games. Pride and ego can literally cause someone to explode. The stakes that seem ridiculous at the start, two guys wanting respect from skateboarders, escalate until a giant floating head from space is threatening them. That's the formula the show would repeat dozens of times. Start with something mundane. Add obsessive commitment. Introduce a supernatural element. Escalate to life or death stakes, and resolve it with extreme violence. Mordecai and Rigby finally beat the universe's greatest gamer, but their victory would soon be overshadowed by a far deadlier challenge. Death himself demanding they babysit a 300-year-old soul. Death showed up at a hospital after Muscle Man's water slide accident went horribly wrong, ready to collect his soul. See, Death had a personal problem that day. His babysitter canceled last minute, and he had anniversary dinner plans with his wife. Mordecai and Rigby, desperate to save their friend who was currently lying dead on a stretcher, offered to do anything. Death proposed a deal. Babysit his son Thomas, get the kid to sleep by 8 p.m., and Muscle Man's soul goes back where it belongs. Fail, and Muscle Man stays dead forever. The whole crisis started earlier that afternoon, when Mordecai and Rigby dared Muscle Man to ride the water slide he'd been building for 6 weeks. Muscle Man had been obsessively perfecting it, claiming it needed more support beams before it was safe to use. When Mordecai and Rigby started booing him, Muscle Man's pride kicked in. He ran up the hill, opened the fire hydrant, and went down shirtless with his arms crossed over his chest like he was in a coffin. The ride started perfectly. Muscle Man zoomed down, screaming, "Woo!" while they cheered. Then the ramp started breaking apart because those support beams really were necessary. He crashed through his own trailer, smashed through tree branches, and landed on top of his car. When he got up, his face was bruised with branches sticking out of his body. He spit out a tooth and asked if he looked cool. That's when Death rolled up through a portal, annoyed and talking on his phone about the babysitter situation. Death planned to just take Muscle Man's soul and leave. Muscle Man protested that he was barely hurt, just a few broken bones. Death didn't care. The injury count qualified him for collection. Mordecai and Rigby jumped in, explaining it was their fault. Death said there were no exceptions. That's when Mordecai offered the deal. Death saw an opportunity. Babysit Thomas so he could take his wife out, and Muscle Man gets to live. The babysitting job came with a massive catch. Thomas had to be asleep by 8 p.m., no exceptions. Death pulled out an amulet and shrunk Muscle Man inside it, trapping him in a tiny, magical prison. Muscle Man screamed and banged on the glass, but there was nothing he could do. Death would keep him in the amulet until he returned from dinner. Death's house was gothic and creepy. His wife came down the stairs and immediately doubted their qualifications. She asked how Death contacted them a month ago, which was a lie since this arrangement was made 5 minutes ago. And they gave 3 different answers at once. Death's wife asked if they had experience with paranormal children. Mordecai confidently said yes, all kinds of normal kids, completely missing that she said paranormal. That's when Thomas appeared. He looked like a regular baby, babbling and crawling around. Death's wife picked him up and warned them that Thomas could be quite a handful. If Thomas wasn't asleep when they returned, there would be consequences for everyone. Death and his wife left for their reservation. Mordecai and Rigby figured this would be easy. Thomas was just a baby. How hard could putting a baby to sleep be? They went to his room and told him it was time for bed. Thomas responded by speaking in a full adult voice, refusing to sleep, and revealing he was over 300 years old. This wasn't a baby who couldn't talk yet. This was an ancient being who chose to pretend to be an infant because he enjoyed the attention and lack of responsibilities. Thomas made his demands clear. Before he'd consider sleeping, they had to play with him. The playing got out of hand fast. Thomas played with a demonic toy vacuum cleaner that shot fire, destroyed a stuffed bunny, had an elaborate fake gunfight, and performed dangerous stunts on a swing set. Muscle Man, trapped in the amulet, was deeply unamused. After playtime, Thomas announced he was hungry. Mordecai checked Death's fridge, which contained items like soul juice and goat's feet. He found regular milk and offered it to Thomas. The 300-year-old baby smacked it away, demanding cookies instead. He used his powers to vacuum all the cookies in the kitchen directly into his mouth, then did the same with pure sugar. The sugar gave him a power boost, and he started bouncing around the kitchen like a hyperactive tornado. The phone rang. It was Death calling to say dinner went great and they were heading home now. If Thomas wasn't asleep, Muscle Man would become a permanent part of his wife's jewelry collection. Mordecai and Rigby searched the house trying to find Thomas, who'd wandered off. They found him floating near the ceiling. Thomas landed and made another demand. His dad always reads him a bedtime story, and he wanted one too. Mordecai grabbed a book, but Thomas rejected it, pointing to a specific book behind them, one being held up by skeleton hands and literally on fire. The book was called The Hungry, Hungry, Soul-Sucking Death Worm. Mordecai expressed doubt, but Thomas insisted. Muscle Man told them to just read it. The story was about a death worm that searched the universe, eating souls. Thomas kept interrupting to tell Mordecai to pull various interactive tabs. Mordecai finished the story. Thomas told him to wait. There was one last tab to pull. Mordecai pulled the final tab. A real, actual soul-sucking death worm exploded out of the book, breaking the table. The creature was massive, with a gaping mouth full of teeth. Mordecai and Rigby screamed and ran, while Thomas clapped excitedly. He shouted instructions to feed it souls, then tried to teleport Muscle Man out of the amulet and into the worm's mouth. Rigby grabbed the amulet and ran while the death worm chased them. Thomas climbed onto Mordecai, trying to grab the amulet himself, biting Mordecai's arm. Mordecai dropped the amulet, and it rolled toward the death worm. Rigby managed to snatch it up at the last second. Mordecai realized they needed to get the worm back in the book. Rigby said he had a plan, and told Mordecai to throw the amulet to Thomas. The amulet landed in Thomas's hands, and the death worm immediately changed direction, diving toward Thomas instead. Thomas realized his mistake too late. Right before the worm could eat both Thomas and Muscle Man, Rigby jumped in front of Thomas with the book open. The worm started getting sucked back into the pages, fighting against the pull but unable to resist. Once the worm was fully inside, Rigby slammed the book shut. Thomas was furious. He'd wanted to see the worm eat a soul. He could have been killed, he shouted, and now he was never going to sleep. He pointed out the time. It was almost 8 p.m. Thomas laughed at their panic. Then the chandelier fell directly on top of him, knocking him unconscious instantly. The front door opened. Death walked in asking what happened, then saw the destroyed house. He was furious. Then he asked about Thomas. Death's wife lifted the chandelier off Thomas, revealing the baby was out cold. She thanked Death for a perfect anniversary. Death's entire demeanor changed. He told Mordecai and Rigby they were the best babysitters he'd ever had. Certainly better than the last few. He held up 3 rings with trapped souls inside. Mordecai asked for Muscle Man's soul back. Death agreed. A deal was a deal. He teleported Muscle Man out and restored him to full size. Death walked them to the door and gave them a final warning. Don't expect it to be easy getting someone's soul back next time, which would be soon because Muscle Man was entering a hot dog eating contest. Everyone laughed. Death clarified he was serious. Muscle Man was definitely going to die at that hot dog eating contest. Death operated on rules, just weird ones. The 8 p.m. deadline was arbitrary but absolutely enforced. The deal was binding because both parties agreed to it. Death kept his word even though Mordecai and Rigby destroyed his house. Death could have just taken Muscle Man's soul and left, but he chose to offer the deal because he needed something. And in regular show's universe, even cosmic entities honor their bargains. Death was terrifying because of what he represented, but he was also reasonable, fair, and strangely respectful. Mordecai and Rigby survived babysitting a centuries-old chaos-wielding infant for Death, only to discover that at the park, Muscle Man's "my mom" joke had evolved into a literal, dangerous force capable of warping reality. Oh, and one quick thing. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps us out. Now, back to the story. Muscle Man's mom joke's manifestation. Mordecai and Rigby destroyed a lemon tree they were supposed to deliver, which led to Benson assigning them the worst possible punishment. Supervision by Muscle Man and High Five Ghost. The real torture came from Muscle Man's signature catchphrase. You know who else? My mom. He said it constantly, turning every conversation into another iteration of the same joke. Benson had given up on trusting them with simple tasks. After they crashed the golf cart and turned a perfectly good lemon tree into a pile of leaves and branches, he calmly decided they needed babysitters. The babysitters were Muscle Man and High Five Ghost, who Mordecai described as having the combined intelligence of bread mold. Rigby considered jumping out of the moving golf cart within minutes just to escape the relentless mom jokes. The tension built as Muscle Man demonstrated he could break every rule while staying in Benson's good graces. He drove past the nursery claiming he knew a shortcut, stopped at a taco stand for lunch, and called Benson asking permission to slack off. Benson immediately approved, trusting Muscle Man completely. The taco stand owner gave them free food just for making mom jokes. A police officer congratulated Muscle Man for breaking traffic laws. Everyone loved him despite his constant joke repetition, which revealed a double standard in how the park's employees were treated. Mordecai started bonding with Muscle Man during a montage at arcades, movie theaters, and bowling alleys. Muscle Man gave a genuine speech about quality bro time and how Mordecai and Rigby were the best. Then he immediately followed it with another mom joke. Mordecai snapped. He explained that saying "my mom" meant Muscle Man was insulting his own mother. The joke should reference someone else's mom. Rigby joined in with examples about gaps in teeth, clothes from garbage, and fat ankles, all redirected as insults toward Muscle Man's mother. Muscle Man's face went from confused to furious. He slammed the brakes, screaming about them disrespecting his mom. The ground split open. A burning truck emerged from underground carrying Muscle Bro, who interrogated them about which one had talked trash about their mother. He knocked Rigby over and shoved Mordecai, then pulled out a photo demanding they compliment her beauty and apologize by kissing the picture. Muscle Bro grilled the photo over an open flame and forced them to eat it while both brothers laughed at their terror. The whole thing was a prank. The photo was Muscle Man's butt cheek squished to look like a woman's face. He dabbled in photography and had multiple prints ready for this exact scenario. The villainy here was psychological warfare disguised as comedy. Muscle Man and his brother weaponized family loyalty to terrorize two co-workers who'd simply corrected his grammar. The threat of violence was real enough that Mordecai and Rigby genuinely believed they might die over a joke correction. Back at the park, Benson thanked Muscle Man and High Five Ghost for getting the job done, while threatening to use them as supervisors again if Mordecai and Rigby messed up. Muscle Man made one final mom joke and drove off. The lasting damage was trust. Mordecai and Rigby now understood that Muscle Man could orchestrate elaborate psychological torture at any moment, complete with family backup and literal hellfire. The episode revealed that Muscle Man's catchphrase worked because his mom was genuinely awesome at everything, which made her the legitimate answer every time. The manifestation was the joke becoming so powerful that challenging it brought literal consequences. Reality bent around Muscle Man's devotion to the bit, and questioning the logic meant eating a photo of his butt cheek while his brother threatened violence. The villainy was making a grammatical correction so dangerous that it required summoning relatives from underground and burning trucks. After surviving a centuries-old baby's chaos and death's deadly deadlines, Mordecai and Rigby faced an even stranger threat: their future selves manipulating time to turn them into musical frauds. The Destroyer of Worlds. Rigby ordered t-shirts for a fake band while Mordecai was drunk on soda and agreeing to everything. They'd spent the previous night coming up with band names, settling on Mustache Cash Stash. The next day, Rigby showed up with shirts that said Mordecai and the Rigbys instead. Just their names, completely different from what they'd agreed on. Margaret saw the shirts and got excited, saying the band should play the coffee shop's open mic night tomorrow. Mordecai panicked because they were just fake shirts for a fake band. When Margaret asked if it was fake, Mordecai backpedaled hard, insisting it was real to avoid embarrassment. She gave them a flyer. Mordecai agreed to play, then face-planted on the table once she left, realizing he'd just committed to performing music they couldn't play. They had to learn one song by tomorrow night. In the garage, they picked up guitars and produced fumbling noise that barely qualified as sound. Pops gave them ancient instructional records from Sir Geoffrey about becoming gentlemen musicians. The records would take 10 years to get through all the lessons. Mordecai asked if there was a faster way. Rigby suggested playing all 3 records at once while they practiced, hoping overlapping instruction would somehow accelerate their learning. Sir Geoffrey's voice overlapped itself, giving contradictory instructions, while Mordecai and Rigby strummed badly. Mordecai shoved Rigby during an argument about looking like idiots at the open mic. Rigby knocked into an amp, spilling soda onto a power strip. The power strip exploded, sending yellow energy through the gramophones. The room went black, then glowed yellow as the gramophones levitated and shot a beam onto the floor. 2 figures emerged: future Mordecai with a goatee and shades dressed like Michael Jackson, and future Rigby with a shaved tail, flannel shirt, and pencil-thin mustache. They launched into brilliant guitar solos, speaking in British accents. They claimed to be Mordecai and Rigby from 10 years in the future, here to teach them how to rock. They were supposedly super successful musicians, with the sunglasses serving as proof that their future was so bright they needed eye protection. Future Rigby showed them the armpit shark tattoo they always wanted. Future Mordecai hinted that Mordecai might get together with Margaret, refusing to ruin the surprise. They promised to get them ready for the gig if they put in the work. A montage showed future versions teaching them rock moves and stances, practicing with brooms, trying on new clothes, struggling to walk in skin-tight pants. The teaching focused entirely on appearance and stage presence, while completely skipping actual musical instruction. When the montage ended, future Mordecai declared them ready. Present Mordecai protested that they never learned how to play and had never even picked up a guitar. Future Mordecai dismissed these concerns, saying they knew enough and the gig was in 20 minutes. At the coffee shop, Benson predicted this would be a train wreck, since those slackers had never picked up an instrument. Margaret put on a shirt and offered to hand out more to pump up the crowd for the closing act. Future Mordecai showed up with glowing guitar picks, shoved them on stage, and insisted they'd be great. The crowd cheered. When Rigby strummed at Future Rigby's signal, a perfect chord came out. They launched into brilliant lead guitar and Mordecai sang perfectly. Then Mordecai dropped his pick. While struggling to lift it, he heard his guitar part still playing and his vocals still going, even though he was away from the mic. His guitar was plugged into an amp that was plugged into nothing. Mordecai saw a CD player at the side of the stage. Future Mordecai and Rigby waved and played air guitar from backstage. Mordecai rushed over and turned off the CD. The crowd fell silent. Rigby continued playing the unplugged electric guitar badly, producing terrible noise. The crowd booed and threw their t-shirts onto the stage in disgust. Mordecai admitted they were lip-syncing, explaining they'd thought they could just order t-shirts and pass themselves off as a band. Playing music was really hard, and they'd gotten caught up in the dream. Future Mordecai ran on stage asking why they stopped when everything was going great. Mordecai said they'd been tricked into lip-syncing. Future Mordecai explained they'd become rich and famous because of it, presenting fraud as a legitimate career path. The villainy here was deliberate. Future Mordecai and Future Rigby had traveled back in time specifically to turn their younger selves into frauds, ensuring their own timeline of wealth built on deception would continue to exist. They taught stage presence and moves while withholding actual musical knowledge, guaranteeing the only way to succeed would be faking it. Mordecai rejected this future, saying that version of success was lame. Future Mordecai might be him, but that was the wrong version to become. Rigby agreed. They took off their t-shirts. Future Mordecai and Future Rigby started fading, begging them to stop and think about what they were doing. Mordecai said he wouldn't want to ruin the surprise and started ripping his t-shirt. Future versions screamed and exploded in white light as their timeline collapsed. After shocked silence, Benson stood and clapped. The crowd joined in cheering for the honesty. Margaret pushed through, saying what he said on stage was cool. Then she introduced her new boyfriend, Angel, the acoustic performer from earlier with actual musical talent. They left for dinner reservations. Mordecai and Rigby stood alone. Rigby suggested maybe Mordecai should have just kept lip-syncing, pointing out that integrity had cost him any chance with Margaret. The Destroyer of Worlds was the keyboard keytar that summoned future Mordecai and Rigby through the electrical accident. The cosmic battle was fought by ripping a t-shirt and choosing to be a loser with principles rather than a successful fraud. The evil was time travel manipulation. Future Mordecai and Future Rigby came back specifically to corrupt their past selves, ensuring a timeline built on lies would survive. They knew exactly what they were doing when they taught everything except music, because they needed their younger selves to commit to the fraud. Mordecai's moment of integrity destroyed that future completely, which proved the future versions were genuine villains willing to sacrifice their past selves' character for wealth. Mordecai and Rigby destroyed a timeline to preserve their integrity, but their next challenge would test their limits even further. A party that could literally consume the world. Party Pete. Mordecai and Rigby threw a party that was dying fast, so they called Party Pete, a German party professional who charged $50 per hour. They could only afford $8 worth of service, which bought them 10 minutes. Party Pete showed up with 2 attractive women, a cassette tape of electronic dance music, and a promotional ice sculpture shaped like a urinal. The party transformed instantly. Guests flooded in, everyone started dancing, and Muscle Man finally admitted their party was awesome. The disaster started when Benson left Skips in charge for the night. Mordecai and Rigby found a crate of Rady Cola from the 1984 Olympics in the attic, and decided this was the perfect opportunity to throw a party. They invited people through social media, bought chips and hummus, and prepared for what they hoped would be an epic night. Muscle Man mocked them relentlessly, saying their parties always sucked because there were never any attractive women there. The tension built as the party completely tanked. Only Skips, Pops, Muscle Man, and High Five Ghost showed up. 3 human guests walked in, realized there was no actual party happening, and immediately left. Muscle Man celebrated being right about how lame their parties were. Mordecai saw a German commercial for Party Pete on TV, a professional party starter who guaranteed results. Rigby protested paying $50 for some guy to come eat their food, but Mordecai was desperate. Party Pete arrived and delivered exactly what was advertised during his 10-minute window. He played music, danced with incredible skill, and brought 2 attractive women who danced and ground next to Skips and Pops. A montage showed increasingly wild party photos. Mordecai and Rigby taunted Muscle Man for being wrong. Then the 10 minutes ended and Party Pete prepared to leave. The party immediately started dying again until Mordecai offered Party Pete a Rady Cola. Party Pete remembered the drink and agreed to keep partying as long as they kept the soda coming. Party Pete downed the can with a manic look in his eye and the party exploded. Dozens of guests flooded the house. Centaurs showed up. People were dancing wildly under disco balls. Someone's jacket caught on fire. The toilet ended up on fire. Benson called from his apartment hearing the music and announced he was coming over. Mordecai and Rigby panicked and searched for Party Pete to shut down the party before Benson arrived. They found Party Pete glowing yellow and dancing wildly, surrounded by empty Rady Cola cans all over the floor. When they told him to stop, he responded that he did want to stop, while his eyes turned into white fire. Party Pete levitated into the air, emitted a flash of green light that illuminated the sky outside, and transformed into a spinning human disco ball. The villainy here was addiction and transformation. Party Pete had warned them about the soda's effects through his commercial's dark undertones, but once he started consuming it, he became an unstoppable force of chaos that would destroy everything around him. Skips explained they needed to give Party Pete more soda to make him grow brighter and brighter until he exhausted all his energy and burned out like a star. They threw cans at him, which he stopped in midair, opened telekinetically, and consumed. His face expanded to hideous proportions. They ran out of soda and grabbed the frozen urinal sculpture, which still had some soda in it. They threw it at Party Pete, and the ice water mixed with soda flew into his mouth. The music hit a high tempo as Party Pete looked ready to explode. Guests evacuated while Skips grabbed Pops and jumped behind an upturned table. Mordecai and Rigby leapt behind the couch. Party Pete screamed and exploded in a blinding flash of white light. The entire front living room was completely destroyed, and the upstairs toilet had fallen through the ceiling, then spontaneously caught fire. The Centaurs and park workers helped clean up the entire house in record time before Benson arrived. Benson sprinted into the house, expecting to catch them throwing a party, only to find Mordecai and Rigby playing video games in a spotless environment. He apologized for doubting them and offered to do something nice. Crack open some Radio Cola from the 1984 Olympics that he'd been saving in the attic. Mordecai and Rigby realized they were dead because they'd used all of Benson's special soda. Party Pete represented excess as a literal demon. The transformation from fun party guy to glowing chaos monster happened because of overconsumption. The evil was the addiction cycle. Once Party Pete started, he couldn't stop, and his need for more soda became an apocalyptic threat. The commercial's German aesthetic and robot voice hinted at something manufactured and inhuman beneath the surface. Party Pete sold fun as a product, but the product consumed everything when taken beyond moderation. Party Pete burned their house to a crisp in a soda-fueled frenzy, but their next disaster would bring a video game boss to life. By the way, if you're enjoying this, a subscribe goes a long way. Now, back to the next part. Clorbane the Destroyer. Mordecai and Rigby spent 20 hours playing a video game trying to reach the final boss called the Hammer. Their regular TV broke right as they discovered his weakness was furniture. They scrambled to find another TV, eventually getting a free black and white model from a warehouse that required jury-rigged connections using Muscle Man's broken TV cord and Pops' destroyed radio speakers. When they powered it on, everything in town shut off, and the TV fused with their game console to manifest the Hammer as a real physical being in their living room. The crisis started when their TV screen stopped working after they'd finally reached level 10 and defeated the burly pink monster boss. Mordecai kept the picture going by slamming the TV while Rigby fought the Hammer alone, discovering that furniture was his weakness. They paused the game with Rigby's character barely alive. The entire quest to find another TV became a race against losing their progress on a game they'd invested 20 hours into. The tension built as everyone they asked for help either had no TV or refused to help. Skips had mystical solutions for everything, except this. He simply owned no TV. Pops offered his radio and insisted it was a TV if you closed your eyes. Muscle Man's TV broke when he tried to carry it while still plugged in. Benson outright refused to lend his TV because they were playing a video game instead of working. A commercial playing on Benson's TV advertised a warehouse literally giving away free TVs, which turned out to mean only the worthless old models were free. The warehouse employee Jimmy, who was Muscle Man's friend, gave them a free black and white TV from the back. Muscle Man convinced Jimmy to help by explaining these guys had reached the hammer, and he wanted to watch them lose. Jimmy got fired for giving away the TV and showed up at the house right as the hammer manifested, getting instantly killed by an energy ball explosion. The hammer proceeded to destroy everyone, knocking out Muscle Man with a single punch, smashing Skips into the wall despite his strength, jacking Pops in the face with a wood plank. The fight revealed the hammer's weakness remained furniture in the real world. Everyone grabbed items around the room and smashed them against the hammer one by one. The hammer started to weaken after taking multiple furniture hits. They ran out of furniture just as the hammer chased after Skips. Mordecai spotted an unused chair and threw it to Skips, who used it to guard himself. The hammer got hit in the groin area and fell to the floor. Skips shouted to grab the control pads. Mordecai and Rigby ran toward the hammer and grabbed his hands, which were the control pads from the game. The others held on to his legs. The hammer tried to break free while his face transitioned to show the video game in color. Mordecai and Rigby finished the game by hitting the hammer with chairs through the control pad hands, gaining an easy win. The TV fell and broke, the power came back on throughout town, and everyone celebrated their victory. Benson walked in carrying his TV, explaining there was a blackout at his place, so he figured he'd help. He saw the house completely destroyed and left without saying another word. The group resumed celebrating by giving each other high fives. The villainy of Clorgbane, revealed to be the hammer's actual name based on the episode title, was manifestation through desperation and jury-rigged technology. The free TV from the warehouse was outdated equipment that required incompatible connections, forcing them to splice together broken parts from multiple sources. When they powered on this Frankenstein setup, they created a bridge between digital and physical reality. The hammer manifested because their desperation to beat the game literally tore him out of the screen. The evil was also Clorgbane's invincibility translating to the real world. In the game, furniture was a quirky weakness that players would discover through trial and error. In reality, this weakness meant smashing every piece of furniture in the house just to damage him. The game's difficulty spike, where a single punch from the hammer took an entire life, became genuinely lethal when Jimmy walked in and got obliterated by an energy ball. Clorgbane brought video game logic into reality, where death was permanent and property damage was real. The commentary on gamer rage culture showed through Mordecai's obsession with beating the hammer after 20 hours invested. He couldn't just give up when Muscle Man tried to turn off the console. The refusal to accept defeat, the willingness to destroy their employer's property and risk everyone's safety, all stemmed from not wanting those 20 hours to mean nothing. Clorgbane was born from their anger at losing, combined with their desperation to win, manifesting as a physical threat because they'd rather face apocalyptic consequences than accept failure at a video game. Clorgbane turned their living room into a war zone from a video game obsession, but Pops was about to discover that escaping fear could be just as deadly. The Guardian of Lollyland. Pops needed to give a speech in front of his father's friends, but had crippling stage fright that made him call himself a no-good turkey who would strawberry jam the whole thing up. Mordecai and Rigby tried multiple methods to help him get over his nerves, including pretending there was an imaginary crowd, practicing in front of real people at various locations, and picturing everyone naked. Nothing worked until Rigby suggested spinning around to get dizzy, which somehow eliminated Pops' anxiety completely. The crisis started when Mr. Mellard threatened to fire Benson if Pops ran away from giving his speech. Pops had literally fled crying when his father told him about the speaking obligation. Mordecai and Rigby found Pops sobbing on the swings, terrified of public speaking. They confidently declared they could help him overcome his fear through practice and exposure therapy. Every attempt failed spectacularly. Pops couldn't pretend an imaginary audience existed, and when they practiced in front of real people at baseball stadiums, concert halls, movie theaters, restaurants, and hospitals, he froze every time. The tension built when Rigby offhandedly suggested spinning around to get dizzy as an alternative to picturing people naked. Mordecai questioned how that would help anything, but Pops preferred it to imagining naked people. Pops started spinning faster and faster, laughing as the world became warped around him. He declared he was finally ready and would give the best speech ever. But he kept spinning, insisting he had to keep going until he gave his speech. He stumbled and fell into a portal in the ground. Pops fell through a green void that stripped him naked and disintegrated his mustache before dropping him into a pink pool leading to Dizzy World, a strange land populated by creatures dressed exactly like him. Two realistic-looking versions of Mordecai and Rigby named Icedrom and Igbeer approached, offering him ice cream. They explained that everyone in Dizzy World hated speeches and had outlawed them. Giving speeches was forbidden, just like refusing to enjoy ice cream. Pops felt relieved he'd found a place where he'd never have to speak publicly again. Back on the surface, Benson arrived and freaked out seeing Pops unconscious with marker drawings on his face, Rigby's nervous habit during the wait. Skips explained they'd made Pops spin too much, and Mordecai and Rigby would have to go into Pops' head to retrieve him. Skips spun them around with a rope and threw it around them before they fell into the portal. They landed in Dizzy World and called out to Pops, who declared he liked it there and refused to come back. He said he hated giving speeches and there must be someone more qualified than him. Mordecai told Pops to come back, but Pops refused and launched into an angry rant about the turmoil he'd endured because of the speech. He questioned why he had to be the one speaking when there were surely people more qualified. He hated speaking in front of crowds and simply couldn't do it despite trying every method. He'd never be able to give a speech, and that was fine by him. Mordecai pointed out that Pops had just given a speech while his back was turned to the crowd. Pops realized he'd spoken without getting nervous because he faced away from everyone. Icedrom and Igbeer immediately turned hostile, hissing and squawking that Pops had broken the law by giving a speech. The villainy revealed itself. Dizzy World's apparent paradise was a totalitarian nightmare, where the punishment for breaking arbitrary rules was death. Icedrom lunged his beak toward Pops, who ran for cover. Igbeer tried to catch Pops with his teeth. Mordecai and Rigby called to Skips to drop them lower on the rope. Icedrom cornered Pops, picked him up by the head with his beak, and threw him toward Mordecai and Rigby. They grabbed the rope and Skips pulled them up just as Icedrom flew toward them. The three escaped into the pink void, causing Icedrom to hit his head on the barrier. Back in the real world, Pops woke up wondering what happened. Benson asked if he could still give the speech. Pops confirmed he was finally prepared. Mordecai explained Pops would give his speech facing backwards. Benson protested that he couldn't give a major speech to a distinguished crowd facing backwards, or they'd all get fired. Mordecai drew a face on the back of Pops' head with the marker, creating a fake front. At the ceremony, Pop stood at the podium with his real face hidden and his marker-drawn face visible. He gave his speech, a single sentence dedicating the new statue to the park. The crowd applauded. Mr. Mellard congratulated his son, saying he was proud. Pops cried on his defaced side while thanking his father. Mr. Mellard told Benson he'd pulled it together and done a good job. Mordecai and Rigby protested that they were the ones who found Pops, but Benson pointed out they'd also sent him into shock and desecrated his face. The Guardian of Lollyland, represented by Icedrom and Igbeer, embodied the dark side of escapism. Dizzy World presented itself as a refuge from anxiety and pressure, a place where Pops would never have to face his fears. The evil was the false paradise built on authoritarian control. Breaking the no speeches rule meant immediate execution, despite speeches being the exact thing Pops fled from. The Guardians protected the realm by ensuring nobody ever challenged its rules or tried to leave once they'd found sanctuary there. Icedrom and Igbeer's transformation from friendly ice cream providers to murderous enforcers showed how quickly safe spaces become prisons when authority goes unchecked. Pops conquered his stage fright in a world where paradise meant death for breaking the rules. But Mordecai and Rigby were about to face a threat far more human and merciless. Night Owl. Chad and Jeremy were two Tech Institute graduates who showed up to clean paddle boats and immediately demonstrated they were better employees than Mordecai and Rigby could ever be. They had cleaning schedules, sent confirmation emails, and promised to finish the job by the afternoon. Benson hired them on the spot after Mordecai and Rigby showed up 2 hours late because Rigby set the alarm for 6 p.m. instead of 6 a.m. The real threat came when they returned in a later episode, revealing their competence masked something far more sinister. The crisis in Replace started when Mordecai and Rigby overslept after throwing a pizza party the night before. They woke up at 8:30 a.m. when they were supposed to meet Benson at the paddle boats 2 hours earlier. They rushed to clean up the trashed house and drove to the lake, only to spy Benson talking to two strangers through the bushes. Chad and Jeremy spoke like actual professionals, discussing cleaning schedules and completion timelines. Benson laughed because he wasn't used to hearing employees talk like that. He hinted that 2 positions would open up soon if they finished by 5 o'clock. The tension built as Mordecai and Rigby desperately tried to sabotage Chad and Jeremy's work. They attempted the debate trick from Two-Headed Dinosaur versus Robo Bigfoot, hoping the guys would argue for days about which would win. Chad and Jeremy simultaneously answered Robotic Bigfoot with zero disagreement. They brought bags of compost claiming they needed help. Then Rigby cut open a bag with a knife to spill it on the cleaned boats. Chad caught them with the knife still in hand. They fought over the bag until it ripped entirely, spilling compost everywhere. Jeremy shoved Mordecai and threatened to punch him in the face if they came back. Mordecai and Rigby regrouped and decided their last option was throwing a pizza party so epic that Chad and Jeremy couldn't resist stopping work to join. Rigby sent out evites to everyone, including lake monsters who climbed out of the water to party. People sat on the paddle boats, dropped pizzas in them, and created chaos. Chad and Jeremy kept working, completely ignoring the party until a purple lake monster pushed Mordecai into Jeremy, who punched him. A massive fight broke out. Benson arrived and shut down the party, firing Mordecai and Rigby on the spot while taking photos of their shocked faces as promised. He offered Chad and Jeremy permanent positions at the park. They scoffed at the idea, explaining they had degrees from the Institute of Technical Technology and wouldn't work at some crazy job like this. They activated rockets in their phones and flew away. Benson stood defeated. Mordecai offered their services as dumb suckers who were really good at cleaning up pizza parties. Rigby took a photo of Benson's shocked face. The villainy of Chad and Jeremy, particularly the night owl aspect referenced in the episode title, was their cold professionalism used as a weapon against sloppy but loyal employees. They represented the threat of replacement by people who could do your job better while caring less about the workplace. Their competence was genuine, their schedules worked, their communication was flawless, but they had zero investment in the park beyond completing a task for money. When things got messy, they left instantly because perfect employees don't stick around when perfection becomes impossible. In lunch break, Night Owl returned as part of a hallucinatory sequence when Mordecai and Rigby ate a massive sandwich to avoid getting fired. The episode showed them recounting past eating challenges through increasingly absurd flashbacks. The final flashbacks spiraled into pure insanity. They were in outer space after Earth blew up, found a food truck called Sandwichies, and brought a sandwich back to their space station. The sandwich came alive with arms and legs, chased them through impossible spaces, including the park and snow mountains, and grew into a giant monster. The sandwich monster declared itself the number 46, too much sandwich for them to handle, and that they'd failed their last eating challenge. RGB-2 from a previous flashback appeared to help, but got hit by the monster. The sandwich revealed its weakness was being edible. Rigby bit the bread, and the monster melted. Back in reality, they'd finished the actual sandwich. Benson rewarded them by forcing them to run 50 laps on the new basketball court or get fired. Night Owl's evil was systematic replacement through superior performance. Chad and Jeremy walked in, showing how easily Mordecai and Rigby could be replaced by people with actual degrees and professional communication skills. They turned competence into a threat, making every completed task a reminder that better employees existed. The workplace villain hits different because the threat isn't cosmic or supernatural. It's someone who makes you look bad just by showing up and doing their job correctly. The lunch break appearance twisted this further by showing Night Owl's philosophy manifesting in unconscious anxiety. The sandwich monster represented every impossible task Benson assigned with firing as the consequence for failure. The number 46 was every time perfectionism became a weapon against people just trying to keep their jobs. The sandwich coming alive showed how even completing tasks correctly can feel like fighting monsters when your employer treats basic work as grounds for termination. Chad and Jeremy weaponized competence to replace Mordecai and Rigby, but the next threat proved that some villains rewrite reality itself. Tiny favor. If you haven't subscribed yet, consider doing so. It helps us keep creating content. Let's move on. The Halloween Wizard. In the episode Terror Tales of the Park, Rigby egged a house on Halloween after the homeowner refused to answer the door. A wizard emerged from the house, ripped off a piece of Rigby's fur, and vowed that Rigby would pay for his disrespect. The wizard appeared across 3 Terror Tales episodes, each time proving that his power to curse and transform victims made him one of the most persistent villains in the show. His magic worked through punishment that fit the crime. Whatever you did to earn his wrath determined how you suffered. The crisis started when Rigby threw eggs at a dark house after the owner wouldn't come to the door. Mordecai warned him about the cops, forcing Rigby to eat a raw egg to prove he was just having a snack. A police officer drove away disgusted. Rigby wiped egg off his mouth and threw the remaining eggs anyway. The door opened and a wizard emerged, pointing at Rigby and declaring he would pay for that. He ripped off a piece of Rigby's fur, laughed evilly, and lightning flashed. The Halloween wizard scared Rigby so badly he ran screaming. The tension built back at the house when Rigby insisted the wizard was coming to get him. Mordecai dismissed it as some creep in a Halloween costume. The Halloween wizard's shadow passed by the window. Rigby gasped, but there was nothing there when they looked. Mordecai offered to trade a spider ring for a candy bar. Rigby looked in his candy pile and the Halloween wizard popped out, causing Rigby to throw all his candy on the floor. Mordecai accused him of acting paranoid. The wizard passed by a window and put a curse on Rigby. Rigby groaned and fell to the floor, transforming into a house. A door number appeared on his chest that he couldn't pull off. A doorknob came out of him, and he fell to the floor. Mordecai realized the wizard had cursed Rigby. The transformation continued. Rigby's tail became a chimney, and he screamed. Mordecai told him to apologize. Rigby ran outside but couldn't move as he transformed into a complete house. Mordecai drove to the wizard's house and banged on the door, begging him to stop whatever he was doing to Rigby. The wizard had already left. Back at the park, Rigby had fully transformed into a 2-story house. Everyone went inside and found it smelled like Rigby. Muscle Man wanted to use the bathroom. The phone rang and the wizard called to ask how Rigby liked his new body. He threatened that everyone would pay and cackled darkly before hanging up. The wizard arrived in a black car. Muscle Man confronted him with a shotgun, telling him to change Rigby back and leave. The wizard whispered that they would all pay, confusing Muscle Man about who was talking. The wizard knew Muscle Man's real name was Mitch and told him to stop making jokes about his mom. Muscle Man fired his shotgun at the sky and grass. The wizard tripped him and carried him behind bushes where Muscle Man fired the shotgun before going silent. The wizard emerged and knocked on the door, revealing a skinless Muscle Man who said he was ripped before dying. The wizard answered High Five Ghost's phone call and sucked him through the receiver, squirting him out as liquid all over Skips and Mordecai. The wizard threw Mordecai against a bookshelf, knocking him unconscious. Benson and Pops hid in rooms. Skips tried punching the wizard, but got tripped and thrown into the chimney. Fire went up and burned Skips, with flames shooting out of House Rigby's chimney. The wizard flushed Benson and his nunchucks down the toilet. He threw Pops into a closet where Pops disappeared. Mordecai woke up and the wizard chopped his head off. Mordecai's head fell to the ground, and he remarked about finally knowing what it felt like to be as tall as Rigby. The wizard went to Rigby and laughed, saying he'd told Rigby he would pay. Rigby screamed for him to do it already. The wizard uncovered a case and threw eggs at House Rigby. Rigby asked if that was it, turning him into a house and killing all his friends just to throw eggs at him. The wizard confirmed that was it and pointed up. A giant egg fell from the sky and drowned Rigby in yolk. The evil here was disproportionate response, elevated to cosmic horror. Rigby egged a house, so the wizard turned him into a house and egged him back. The punishment mirrored the crime through magical literalism. The wizard killed everyone else simply because they were associated with Rigby. The transformation curse worked slowly, giving Rigby time to understand what was happening while being powerless to stop it. Each body part that became architecture was a reminder that disrespecting someone's property had consequences. In the episode Terror Tales of the Park 2, the wizard's methodology appeared again when Margaret told a story about the party bus. The bus driver was revealed to be a skeleton who aged everyone to death by making them party too hard. The wizard's approach showed up. Take something fun and turn it lethal through supernatural exaggeration. In the episode Terror Tales of the Park 3, the wizard made his final appearance when Rigby transformed into him at the end of the episode, revealing he'd been telling the whole story. The wizard wished everyone happy Halloween before the episode ended. The meta-narrative showed how the Halloween wizard represented storytelling itself. Each Terror Tales episode frames scary stories as entertainment, but the wizard proved that stories have power beyond just scaring people. He existed because people told stories about him. His ability to curse Rigby came from Rigby's own guilt about egging the house. The transformation into a house happened because Rigby violated someone's home. The wizard's magic was consequence made literal. The Halloween wizard turned playful mischief into lethal consequences. And the next threat proved some enemies infiltrate your life with perfect, cold efficiency. In the 2-part episode, The Real Thomas, Natalia revealed herself as a Russian spy who had infiltrated the park by posing as Benson's girlfriend Natalie. Thomas, actually Nikolai, a Russian sleeper agent, had been working with her to steal American park technology from Mother Russia. The tragedy was that while Nikolai developed genuine friendships, Natalia remained purely devoted to the mission. Her connection to the episode Brain Eraser remains ambiguous, though both episodes dealt with hidden identities and things people couldn't unsee. The crisis started when Rigby caught Thomas fighting a CIA agent behind the house at night. Thomas knocked out the agent and told Rigby it was just a dream before knocking him unconscious too. The next morning, Rigby tried to prove Thomas was up to something by showing everyone the signs of a struggle. Thomas claimed the duffel bag Rigby grabbed only contained dirty laundry. Rigby heard Thomas speaking Russian on the phone and found sprinkler heads with Russian warnings written on them. The tension built when Muscle Man opened a cupboard looking for chips and found the CIA agent's body inside. They discovered the agent's credentials. Two men with Russian accents arrived claiming to be from the American Intern Society of America, needing to give Thomas an exit interview. Mordecai and Rigby went to find Benson, while Muscle Man and High Five Ghost stalled the visitors. They found Skips and Pops tied up with duct tape over their mouths in a secret base hidden behind a desk in the device storage room. Benson's date Natalie revealed herself by kicking him into the secret base. She dropped her American accent and declared herself Natalia, a Russian spy. She said one of their own had been conspiring against them and called for Nikolai. Thomas entered, revealing his real name was Nikolai, and he was a Russian spy. He explained his entire backstory. Abandoned as a baby in Kiev, raised by the KGB, trained as the perfect weapon for Operation Parklift to steal American park secrets. Benson found it flattering that Russia was copying their park until Nikolai explained this park was astonishingly average, and they planned to infiltrate way better parks if the trial succeeded. Nikolai had used being an intern as perfect cover since no one suspects the lowest rung on the ladder. His mom was a robot. Every time he asked Benson questions, he was gathering intelligence. The park workers were tied up and taken to a van, where Anatoly greeted them. Nikolai armed a perimeter system and pressed buttons that caused church domes, Russian icons, and rockets to grow through the ground as the entire park flew toward Russia. The villainy of Natalia was pure commitment to the mission. When Nikolai activated the system, she received new orders from Commander Romanov. She revealed the plan was to fly the park into a Russian missile, technically not violating the nuclear arms treaty, since Russia wouldn't be firing at American soil. America would be flying into the missile. Nikolai protested that he never wanted to hurt anyone and just wanted to build a park. Natalia laughed that maybe they'd use the rubble to make a new park. Benson tried to reason with Natalie, saying she was taking this too far and it had to end now. He threw his fist toward her, but she crunched it, breaking his hand. Benson said first his heart and now his hand. Rigby appealed to Thomas, saying he knew Thomas was a Russian spy, but he was also their friend. Nikolai started remembering his times as Thomas. Natalia slapped him and told him they treated him like dirt, slapping him repeatedly. Nikolai said he knew interns have terrible lives, but he barely felt comfortable speaking around them. Rigby reminded Nikolai about the good times they'd had. Benson revealed they were going to offer Thomas a full-time position. Rigby said being buddies meant something and asked if the park meant anything. Nikolai switched back to Thomas, saying being buddies did mean something and turned the park around. Natalia kicked the control box out of Thomas's hands, pushing the park closer to Russia. Thomas ran toward her and they fought. She kicked him into the controls, tilting the chopper. She fell into the ocean where a whale ate her alive. The tragedy of Natalia was that she never wavered from her programming. While Nikolai developed genuine feelings for his coworkers despite his training, Natalia remained the perfect spy, cold, efficient, and willing to sacrifice anything for the mission. Her relationship with Benson was entirely fabricated. She manipulated him through romance, while Nikolai was manipulated by actual friendship. The difference was Nikolai's training failed because he experienced real human connection. Natalia's training succeeded completely, which was why she died still loyal to Russia. The connection to the episode Brain Eraser suggests a thematic link about hidden truths and things people wish they could unsee. In that episode, Mordecai accidentally saw Pops naked and tried to erase the memory using a VHS tape that pulled him into his own mind. The ambiguity about whether there's a direct connection reflects the show's approach to continuity. Callbacks matter when they enhance the story. Whether there was an earlier Russian operation or not, Natalia represented the danger of underestimating quiet people who blend into the background and weaponize trust. Natalia's cold, unwavering loyalty to espionage showed how invisible enemies can weaponize trust. And next, the stakes became literal survival under a master whose power and vengeance extended to every bite you took. The Grand Master of Death, Kwon Do. In the episode Sandwich of Death, the Grand Master of Death Kwon Do controlled access to both the death sandwich and its only cure, the Sandwich of Life. The Death Kwon Do sensei had stolen the recipe for the death sandwich from the Grand Master and mass-produced it without permission. This betrayal mirrored mob movie dynamics, a student stealing from his teacher, commercializing sacred knowledge, and facing violent retribution. The Grand Master operated like a crime boss who controlled both the poison and the antidote, making survival dependent on his mercy. The crisis started when Mordecai and Rigby saw a commercial for the Death Sandwich at Death Kwando Pizza and Subs. The commercial warned that eating it wrong would kill you. You had to wear cut-off jean shorts and a mullet. They bought the sandwich and left it on the kitchen table while they went to get mullets and cut-offs. Benson walked in, saw the unattended sandwich, and decided to eat it as payback for all the times they'd stolen his food. He took a bite without the proper attire and started choking, his face turning green. The tension built when the sensei explained Benson was beyond the help of Western medicine. His only chance was to see the Grand Master, protector of the sandwich of life. One bite would cure him instantly. They had 6 hours before Benson died. The sensei had to accompany them because no outsider was allowed before the Grand Master. When they arrived at the temple, guards punched the sensei and turned him away. He admitted he'd had a falling out with the Grand Master. The sensei revealed Plan B: sneak in and take the sandwich by force. He gave Benson cut-off jeans and shaved his head into a mullet, granting him the power of Death Kwando. They infiltrated the temple and fought through multiple chambers. The first chamber had a pit filled with bamboo poles, where they had to say, "Step of death," with every step, or they'd plummet to their death. Guards attacked with bladed weapons. They fought through chambers with guards carrying sickles jumping from trees, guards on motorcycles with meteor hammers, guards with sais in mist, guards with powerful axes, and a guard in a hockey mask who could multiply. They reached the summit where the Grand Master floated above the mountain's peak. 2 sandwiches sat beside him, the Sandwich of Life on organic multigrain and the Double Death Sandwich. The sensei explained the Grand Master had taken him off the streets and raised him like a son, but the sensei had repaid him by stealing the Death Sandwich recipe and mass-producing it without permission. The Grand Master refused to hand over the Sandwich of Life and ordered his guards to kill them. The Grand Master tried to shave off the sensei's mullet with a flying razor, which would remove his Death Kwando powers. Mordecai and Rigby fought the guards while the Grand Master's outfit came off to reveal cut-off jean shorts and wristbands. He took 2 sticks from his hair and let it unfold into an extremely long mullet. He threw sticks at Mordecai and Rigby and fought them hand to hand, landing multiple blows while blocking their attacks. Benson weakly pleaded in ancient dialects, barely clinging to life. The Grand Master uncovered the Double Death Sandwich and sent it flying forward with an attack yell. The sensei played notes on a flute and sent a yellow bird with folded paper to Mordecai and Rigby. The paper showed them the bicycle kick of death. They performed the move and deflected the Double Death Sandwich directly into the Grand Master's mouth, killing him instantly. Rigby tossed the Sandwich of Life to the sensei, who fed it to Benson, curing him just as the mountain started self-destructing. The villainy was the Grand Master's absolute control through food. He'd created both the deadliest sandwich known to man and its only cure, then guarded both at a temple requiring infiltration to access. The power structure mirrored organized crime. The Grand Master sat at the top of a mountain, surrounded by loyal soldiers who would die protecting his interests. The sensei's betrayal involved stealing intellectual property and commercializing it, which broke the sacred trust between master and student. The Grand Master's punishment was disproportionate but absolute, just like a mob boss dealing with betrayal. The mob movie parodies executed perfectly through the temple infiltration. Each chamber represented an escalating level of danger, like layers of protection around a crime boss. The guards used increasingly elaborate weapons and tactics. The final confrontation happened at the summit, where the Grand Master revealed his true power. The Double Death Sandwich functioned like a weapon of mass destruction that the boss controlled exclusively. The sensei's redemption arc followed classic mob movie structure. The wayward son returning to face his father figure's wrath and ultimately helping destroy him. The martial arts system itself operated like organized crime. The mullets and cut-off jean shorts were initiation rituals granting power to members. The sacred sandwiches were secrets worth killing to protect. The Grand Master's lair worked like a compound where outsiders faced immediate violence. The falling out between master and student over stolen recipes mirrored disputes over territory and respect. The mountains self-destructing after the boss's death showed how the entire organization collapsed without its leader. Just like crime families crumbling when the Don gets taken out. The Grand Master killed to protect his sandwiches, but the next threat came from a force no one could contain. Love turned deadly. The Urge. In the episode The Longest Weekend, Muscle Man and Starla watched a terrible romantic movie that inspired Starla to test their relationship by forcing them to spend the weekend apart. Muscle Man started seeing Starla everywhere, in his soup, chicken nuggets, watermelon, clouds, lamps, and bowling balls. His desperation to contact her manifested physically as blue, glowing energy that pulled him toward her location. The villain wasn't an external threat. It was Muscle Man's own inability to control his urges, which became a literal supernatural force dragging him toward relationship destruction. The crisis started when Starla declared they were too close and needed space for their love to grow. She referenced the movie they just watched, where two lovers exploded when they came together before their designated reunion time. Starla said if they couldn't get through 2 days apart, they should break up. She told Muscle Man to meet her at the clock tower Sunday at midnight and walked away. Muscle Man insisted he'd be fine and could play the game when it came to ladies. The tension built when Muscle Man tried watching television to distract himself. A monster truck rally called Couples Crush featured two trucks bumping each other like they were kissing. Muscle Man started laughing and picked up the phone to call Starla before remembering he couldn't contact her. He looked at a van magazine and the lady on one van turned into Starla, asking why he wasn't calling. He screamed and tossed the magazine away. A chicken wing spoke with Starla's voice, saying she missed him. The mop, watermelon, cloud, lamp, and bowling ball all transformed into Starla's face, begging him to call. Muscle Man ran screaming from his trailer. Mordecai, Rigby, and High Five Ghost were drinking sodas when Muscle Man burst in saying he needed help. He explained the Starla thing was freaking him out and he was seeing her everywhere. If he didn't get help, he'd call her and she'd dump him. Mordecai and Rigby agreed to help him through the weekend. They conducted a montage of confiscating everything Muscle Man could use to contact Starla: phones, computers, carrier pigeons, smoke signals. Margaret called Mordecai asking how Muscle Man was doing. Mordecai admitted he wasn't doing much better, and they agreed the situation was dumb. Margaret said if two people like each other, they should just be together. Mordecai nervously agreed, saying, "like them," then backtracked awkwardly. Margaret asked if he was feeling okay, and Mordecai hung up quickly. The guys found Muscle Man had created a dummy to escape out the window. They pulled him back inside, screaming Starla's name. The villainy emerged when Muscle Man's body started glowing blue and moving towards Starla on its own. He'd waited long enough and didn't want to wait anymore. He bet Starla didn't want to wait anymore either. His body broke free from everyone holding him, and he flew towards Starla as a blue fireball, howling like a dog. Starla also glowed pink and flew toward him from the coffee shop where Margaret and Eileen tried restraining her. Both of them turned into fireballs and howled as they approached each other. The clock struck midnight just as the two fireballs collided at the clock tower. The impact created a massive explosion that affected the entire town. A dog jumped into a lake, a car exploded, Old Man Horseshoes got struck by lightning playing golf, mallets smashed watermelons and other mallets, a pufferfish puffed up, someone chopped blocks of wood, lightning struck a tree, and a man approaching a porta-potty saw it explode. The explosion was so powerful it created a mushroom cloud visible from space. Muscle Man and Starla emerged from the blast, holding hands and floating in the air. Muscle Man thanked everyone for helping him and said it was totally worth waiting to prove their love. Everyone watched as the two immediately started making out, much to everyone's disgust. The evil here was self-inflicted suffering justified as romantic devotion. Starla weaponized love by turning it into a test that nearly killed them both. The urge represented what happens when emotional repression gets taken to supernatural extremes. Muscle Man physically couldn't control his need to be with Starla because the show literalized his emotional state. The glowing blue energy was his urge made visible. The howling like a dog showed he'd been reduced to animal instinct. The explosion symbolized what happens when two people who've repressed their feelings finally release everything at once. Total destruction followed by euphoria. The commentary on toxic relationship tests showed how manufactured obstacles create unnecessary suffering. Starla got the idea from a bad movie where lovers exploded if they came together too soon. She applied fictional romance logic to real life and nearly killed herself and Muscle Man in the process. The test proved nothing except that they both had poor impulse control and were willing to endanger everyone around them for validation. The explosion affected innocent bystanders who had nothing to do with their relationship drama. The workplace implications showed how personal problems become everyone else's problem. Mordecai, Rigby, High Five Ghost, Pops, Skips, and Thomas all had to babysit Muscle Man for an entire weekend because he couldn't control himself. They tied him to a couch, confiscated communication devices, and physically restrained him multiple times. His inability to handle separation anxiety required a team effort to prevent him from ruining his own relationship. The park workers became hostages to Muscle Man's emotional instability. Muscleman's uncontrolled obsession nearly destroyed the town. But the next disaster came from a son seeking apocalyptic revenge for his father's video game loss. Oh, and before we continue, subscribing really helps us out and costs nothing. Alright, back to it. Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. In the two-part episode Exit 9B, Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. revealed himself as the bearded contractor who'd been trying to buy the park for months before taking it by force. He was the son of the universally renowned gaming champion Garrett Bobby Ferguson, who Mordecai and Rigby had defeated and accidentally caused to explode in the episode High Score. GBF Jr. spent 2 months brainwashing the park workers and giving them new identities before building a freeway that would serve as a gateway to the fiery center of the earth, allowing his father and every previous villain to return from beyond the grave. The crisis started when Thomas arrived for his first day as an intern and found the house empty. He heard an explosion outside and saw Pops, High Five Ghost, and Benson running in terror before getting hit with lasers. Skips ran past the shooter, dodged some lasers, then got shot down. Muscleman tried to escape, but was also shot. Mordecai and Rigby ran carrying a time machine and a file. Just as they were about to be shot, the time machine activated and they disappeared. The bearded man walked up to the house and said they should have sold it to him when they had the chance, then blew up the house with a detonation device. The tension built 2 months later when Mordecai and Rigby returned from their time travel escape. The park was now a construction site, with the freeway nearly complete. They found Skips working at an auto body shop, completely brainwashed with no memory of ever working at the park. When they mentioned the evil bearded guy, Skips pinned them against the wall by their necks and demanded to know who they worked for. Rigby reminded Skips about the only woman he ever loved, triggering flashback memories that broke the brainwashing. Skips helped them infiltrate the park office to find files showing everyone's new identities. Pops worked as a butterfly sanctuary instructor. Muscleman taught quantum mechanics at a university. High Five Ghost delivered pizzas. Benson still worked at the park as the only employee who kept his original job. Mordecai and Rigby had a document declaring the park a historical landmark that required all park workers' signatures to make it illegal to build Exit 9B. They needed everyone's signature to stop the construction. The group went around restoring everyone's memories. Mordecai showed Pops a butterscotch ripple lollipop, triggering his memories. Mordecai asked Muscleman's class if they knew who else's C=8, and Muscleman responded with his signature "my mom" joke, restoring his memories. Muscleman gave High Five Ghost a high five, restoring his memories through their friendship. They were about to get Benson's signature when Thomas revealed their location, and Benson had them all captured and buried neck-deep in cement at the end of the freeway ramp. The bearded man revealed himself by struggling out of his body to show he was just a floating head. He was Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr., son of the universally renowned gaming champion. He said Mordecai and Rigby couldn't just go around exploding people's dads. The freeway was complete and became a gateway to the fiery center of the earth. Dozens of villains from previous episodes walked out of the portal. The Urge, Hot Dog Guy, the Stag Man, the Hammer, No Rules Man, Party Pete, the Duck Collector, the Summertime Song, the Destroyer of Worlds, Susan, the Lemon Chef, the Baby Ducks, and many others. GBF Sr. appeared from the portal as a giant head. He floated to his son, and they both grew arms and legs before hugging. They prepared to attack the park workers when Skips whistled, summoning the Guardians of Eternal Youth, Gary, Tecmo, the god of basketball, and death. The Guardians zapped the cement, freeing the workers. Mordecai gave a speech about fighting for what they cared about and not backing down. Both armies charged at each other in an epic battle. The villainy of GBF Jr. was generational revenge taken to apocalyptic extremes. His father exploded because he lost a video game, so GBF Jr. spent months planning an elaborate scheme to resurrect every villain the park workers had ever defeated. The brainwashing showed methodical cruelty. He wanted the park workers to forget who they were before destroying them. The freeway served dual purposes as both a physical replacement for the park and a mystical portal to hell. The army of undead villains represented every consequence coming back at once. Each villain had been defeated in previous episodes through various methods. Some exploded, some got sent to other dimensions, some died in combat. GBF Jr. brought them all back simultaneously, creating an overwhelming force that should have been impossible to defeat. The resurrection was a statement that actions have permanent consequences, and the park workers would eventually face everything they'd ever done. The epic scale showed how one act of violence ripples outward. Mordecai and Rigby beat a video game high score, which caused GBF Sr. to explode. This created GBF Jr.'s motivation for revenge, which led to brainwashing the entire park staff, building a freeway, opening a portal to hell, and resurrecting dozens of villains for a battle that nearly destroyed the park. The punishment was disproportionate to the crime. But GBF Jr. believed losing a father justified any level of destruction. The two-part structure allowed the episode to function as both a clip show and an original story. The first part established the threat and showed the brainwashing, while the second part featured the massive battle with cameos from nearly every previous villain. The callbacks to previous seasons rewarded longtime viewers who recognized each returning character. The Guardians of Eternal Youth, Gary, Tecmo, the God of Basketball, and Death all represented allies the park workers had made throughout the series, showing that making friends was just as important as defeating enemies. The ultimate defeat came when Thomas signed the document declaring the park a historical landmark. GBF Jr. had forgotten about Thomas because he was just an intern who started right before the attack. This oversight proved fatal. The document completed, the portal closed, and all the villains got sucked back to where they came from along with the freeway. GBF Sr. told his son he'd just broken the universe record for disappointing his father before exploding again. GBF Jr. screamed in despair and also exploded, ending the threat permanently. GBF Jr.'s apocalyptic vendetta left the park reeling, but the next threat proved that even admiration can be twisted into a violent test of who deserves recognition. Doug McFarland. In the episode World's Best Boss, Doug McFarland emerged from a delivery package claiming to be the world's best boss. The park workers had ordered a World's Best Boss mug for Benson's 10-year anniversary, but the website guaranteed that only the world's best boss could drink from it. Doug arrived with his elite staff and challenged Benson's right to the mug through a violent confrontation that proved being the best boss meant protecting your employees at any cost. The crisis started when Pops noticed Benson working late every night and proposed getting him a gift for his 10-year anniversary. Everyone suggested different gifts until Rigby sarcastically said they should get him a World's Best Boss mug. Pops thought it was perfect, and everyone agreed, missing Rigby's point that Benson wasn't actually the world's best boss. They went to the mall searching every store until finding the last one at a discount shop called 100 Cents and More. The tension built when another man ran into the store, also looking for a World's Best Boss mug. Both the man and the park workers raced through the store, with the man throwing obstacles in their path. Mordecai and the man both grabbed the mug at the same time and fought over it until they flung it into the air. Rigby tried to catch it but failed, and the mug smashed into a stand. The man ran away while the park workers stared at the broken remains. Skips tried fixing the mug with glue, but when Muscle Man poured coffee into it, the liquid spilled through the cracks. This made Muscle Man angry enough to throw the coffee pot, flip the table, and stomp the mug pieces. They found the mug being sold on a website with overnight shipping guaranteed. The website's commercial showed different types of bosses: horrible ones, good ones, great ones, before declaring only one could be the world's best boss, and that person deserved the world's best mug. The delivery arrived the next morning in an unusually large package. When Pops opened it, an arm emerged and hit him in the face. A second arm appeared and both tore the box in half, revealing Doug McFarland. He drank from the world's best boss mug and explained that ordering it meant being prepared to meet the world's best boss. Muscle Man demanded he hand over the mug, but Doug refused, saying only the world's best boss could drink from it. The park workers huddled and decided to take the mug by force since there was only one of him. Doug pulled out his phone and called for help. 4 vans and a motorbike arrived, dumping boxes that contained his elite staff, men who broke out dramatically, including one carried in by 2 people and a strong man on the motorbike. Doug introduced them as the best in the business who got in the mug, and the park workers would have to work it out with them. The villainy was corporate culture weaponized into physical combat. Doug represented the toxic boss who measured success through dominance rather than actual leadership. His staff were motivated by extra vacation days for whoever got the most knockouts, turning violence into a performance review. When Rogers received a phone call from Doug telling him to shred the TIE report, he brought in a paper shredder and fed Muscle Man's tie into it while Muscle Man squealed in terror. Benson arrived and asked what was happening. Mordecai explained through choking that it was supposed to be a surprise. Doug turned to Benson and said he couldn't say he was impressed with what he'd seen so far. He told Benson he couldn't believe his employees thought he deserved the mug. Benson asked what the guy was talking about. Rigby explained they wanted to get him a World's Best Boss mug for his anniversary while getting punched. Benson said that was ridiculous because he was far from being the world's best anything, and why would he want a mug? The park workers fought back while defending Benson's qualities. Mordecai said Benson was a good boss and deserved the mug. Pop said Benson never missed a day of work. Skip said Benson stayed later than anyone else. Thomas said Benson always remembered his name. Rigby said even though Benson was mad most of the time, it was usually their fault. Each declaration was punctuated by getting beaten by Doug's staff, showing they were willing to take punishment to defend their boss. Doug told Benson to call off his guys, but Doug said you can't stop in the middle of a job and had to let employees work it out. Benson saw his reflection on the World's Best Boss mug and scowled. He saw Muscle Man being tortured with the paper shredder and couldn't take it anymore. Benson became furious, ran toward Muscle Man, and attacked the staff restraining him. He freed Muscle Man, who grabbed the paper shredder and put it over the employee's head before kicking him down. Benson and the park workers fought together as a team. They freed each other, used broken banisters as charging poles, and pushed Doug's employees into bushes. Doug asked what kind of boss Benson was, and Benson declared himself the world's best boss before violently punching Doug in the face. Doug stumbled backward, dropped the mug, and landed in a delivery van. He fell on the handbrakes, hit the side window, and fell onto the acceleration pedal. The van drove forward and collided with a passing truck, turning into an obliterated black mess and killing Doug. The evil was the commodification of leadership. Doug treated being the best boss as something you could purchase through a website, rather than earn through actual management. His staff were extensions of his ego, rather than people he cared about. The paper shredder torture showed how he turned workplace tools into weapons. The extra vacation days for knockouts revealed he motivated through competition rather than teamwork. Doug's entire philosophy was that leadership meant domination, and the best boss was whoever could beat up everyone else's employees. The commentary on workplace culture showed the difference between performative leadership and actual care. Doug had the mug, the elite staff, and the corporate presentation. Benson had employees willing to get beaten up while defending his qualities. Doug measured success through metrics and competition. Benson measured success through keeping the park running despite constant chaos. When Doug's van exploded, it symbolized how hollow corporate success is compared to genuine relationships with the people you manage. Doug McFarlane turned admiration into a battlefield. But the next threat showed that even allies could bring video game logic to life with catastrophic consequences. Tecmo. In the episode, A Bunch of Full-Grown Geese, Tecmo was a video game character who escaped from his arcade cabinet and helped Mordecai and Rigby defeat the Canadian geese terrorizing the park. He was the protagonist of a fighting game who brought video game logic into the real world. Giant laser cannons, power-ups, and transformation sequences that turned everyday objects into weapons of mass destruction. Tecmo operated on a strict warrior code, where every battle had stakes and every victory meant honor. The crisis started when 4 fully grown Canadian geese took over the park's lakeside. They scared couples away, pushed a squirrel off a bridge, dropped a giant rock on a paddle boat, and destroyed the hoagie sandwich Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops had been making. When Pops tried to reason with them, the geese pushed him around until he ran away sobbing. The geese grabbed the sandwich, threw it in a trash can, then punched the trash can repeatedly before rolling it toward the park workers. Benson ordered Mordecai and Rigby to get rid of the geese. They tried waving blankets to scare them away, but the geese turned the blankets into whips and beat them. They tried using geese repellent called Get Gone Geese, but the geese grabbed the hose and sprayed it on them instead. The repellent smelled like rotten eggs and made them reek. Skips refused to help because geese were too dangerous, suggesting they call the baby ducks instead, since geese and ducks were natural enemies. Mordecai called the baby ducks for advice. The baby ducks said to use lasers because geese hate them, singing their signature song about shining lasers in the geese's faces and watching them run away. Mordecai and Rigby hid in bushes with laser pointers and shined them on the geese. 3 geese flew away following the lasers, but the 4th goose stayed behind and ambushed them. The geese attacked and threw a tree on them. Tecmo appeared with a giant green laser that blasted the tree. The baby ducks had sent him because they figured Mordecai and Rigby would get in trouble. Tecmo told the geese to leave because the lake wasn't theirs. One of the geese spoke in a deep voice, revealing they were terraforming the lake for their own kind by removing all non-goose life forms and fertilizing the soil. The goose said if the ducks wanted the lake, they'd have to take it by force. The geese glowed red and transformed into a giant 4-headed goose robot. The baby ducks fist pumped and merged together into Duckman. The two giants prepared to fight. The goose monster fired Scrabble missiles at them, but Duckman blocked them and flew toward the goose monster. The goose monster shocked Duckman with electricity, sending him flying backward. Duckman fired a blast that had no effect, then charged directly into a large energy sphere that knocked him down. The goose monster grabbed a tree near the house, knocked off the top part, threw it in the sky, and destroyed it with Scrabble missiles. The monster destroyed parts of the house, including Mordecai and Rigby's room. The goose monster grabbed their television, called it standard definition, and said destroying it was doing them a favor, then threw it in the sky and obliterated it with missiles. Mordecai and Rigby screamed in horror. Duckman told Mordecai and Rigby they needed to fist pump to power him up. When they fist pumped with everything they had, a ray of light shot into the sky. Their video game console, gaming fists, shoes, and shorts emerged from their destroyed room and merged with Duckman. The song The Touch by Stan Bush played as Duckman transformed into a more powerful form with Mordecai and Rigby piloting from inside. The villainy of Tecmo wasn't traditional. He was the hero. The episode showed what happens when video game logic enters reality. Transformation sequences that take 30 seconds. Giant robots formed from fist pumping. Manual sword control using video game controllers. Sonic shields and rocket fists. Everything operated on fighting game mechanics where conflicts resolved through increasingly escalating combat moves until someone landed the finishing blow. The goose monster represented the danger of territorial aggression taken to apocalyptic extremes. The geese were terraforming the entire lake ecosystem to make it suitable only for geese. They'd calculated their invasion, removed all other life forms, and fertilized the soil. The transformation into a giant robot showed how small acts of aggression, when combined and organized, become overwhelming threats. The fight demonstrated video game combat philosophy. Duckman used Sonic Shield to block attacks, Rocket Fist for ranged damage, and manual sword control for the finishing move. When Mordecai and Rigby diverted power to shoes, Duckman gained enhanced mobility. When they drew the power sword, they had to manually control it using video game controllers that appeared in the cockpit. The final move involved spinning the sword in circles while charging at the goose monster, cutting it apart. In the episode Meteor Moves, the Guardian of the Friend Zone mentioned having fought various battles, though Tecmo himself didn't appear. The connection between episodes showed how Regular Show built a universe where video game characters, supernatural entities, and cosmic beings all existed in the same world. Tecmo represented friendship through combat. He came to help because the baby ducks asked him to, and he fought alongside Mordecai and Rigby without questioning whether they deserved his assistance. The evil was environmental terrorism disguised as natural behavior. The Canadian geese claimed territorial rights through violence, destroyed property for intimidation, and planned complete ecological replacement. Their ability to merge into a giant robot suggested they'd been preparing for military conflict. The Scrabble missiles were weaponized language. Each missile had letters on it, representing how the geese communicated through destruction. Tecmo brought video game chaos to real life, but the next villain showed that corporate greed could turn love itself into a battlefield. By the way, if you're enjoying this, a subscribe goes a long way. Now, back to the next part. Matchmaker McIntyre. In the episode Real Date, Matchmaker McIntyre was the CEO of Couple Corral, a dating website that Mordecai had forgotten to delete his profile from. McIntyre stalked Mordecai throughout his date with CJ, sabotaging their romantic moments and demanding Mordecai break up with CJ to rejoin the dating site. He escalated from phone calls to in-person harassment to military-grade weaponry, revealing that his business model required keeping people lonely and single to maintain subscriber numbers. The crisis started when Mordecai and CJ were playing Mineropoly with Rigby and Eileen. Benson dropped off weeks of accumulated mail containing multiple letters from Couple Corral. Mordecai tried deleting his profile on his phone, but the deletion process kept asking confirmation questions like, "Are you sure, partner?" and "Did you mean to press no?" Eileen asked if Mordecai and CJ had been on a real date rather than just hanging out, inspiring them to plan a romantic dinner at a fancy restaurant. Mordecai bought CJ a charm bracelet, with charms representing everything they did the first time they met. A roller skate, grilled cheese sandwich, air hockey mallet, shopping cart, laser gun, cloud, video game controller, go-kart, and alligator. Benson suggested having a waiter serve the gift box in place of dessert as a romantic gesture. Mordecai called the restaurant to arrange it. Meanwhile, CJ ordered a chocolate-covered waffle cake from La Wafflerie as a surprise dessert for Mordecai. During dinner at Bistro on Le Parc, the concierge told Mordecai he had a call at the front. McIntyre introduced himself as CEO of Couple Corral, saying this wasn't a recording. He noticed Mordecai had deleted his profile and begged him to rejoin, offering free romantic coupons. When Mordecai said adios to cancel, McIntyre revealed he was standing right behind him. He told Mordecai to break up with CJ because Couple Corral could help him find somebody better. McIntyre pulled up CJ's profile on his phone and scrolled through photos showing different hairstyles. He said keeping her information was probably illegal, but did it anyway. He stopped on a photo of goth CJ and said Mordecai couldn't expect her to be committed when she couldn't even commit to a hairstyle. Mordecai shoved McIntyre away, saying he liked CJ and wanted to be left alone. McIntyre glared menacingly as Mordecai walked back to his table. The tension built when Mordecai tried to give CJ the bracelet through the waiter's dessert plan, but CJ excused herself to the bathroom to take a call from Leroy Fleury about her waffle cake. McIntyre pulled up outside the restaurant in his car with high beams shining through the window. His horn played La Cucaracha as he called out asking if Mordecai wanted to meet a girl who doesn't have to go to the bathroom. Both Mordecai and CJ made excuses to separate and coordinate with Rigby and Eileen to deliver their respective gifts. Rigby and Eileen met at the town square fountain, both realizing Mordecai and CJ were planning surprise gifts for each other. They coordinated new plans to have both gifts delivered at the waterfront amusement park. Mordecai and CJ arrived at a candlelit table with both gifts waiting. They laughed about making excuses to each other and admitted they'd been calling their friends. They apologized for the date not being more romantic, but CJ said it was the most romantic date she'd ever been on. As Mordecai and CJ moved in for a kiss, the pier shook. McIntyre's submarine rose from the water with him emerging from the hatch. He demanded one last time that Mordecai break up with CJ. Mordecai asked why McIntyre wanted them to break up when they were the point of dating sites. McIntyre explained that happy couples don't use Couple Corral, lonely people do. Lonely people lead to subscribers. Subscribers lead to clicks. Clicks lead to millions of dollars. And millions of dollars lead to corporate-branded merchandise. McIntyre sobbed that his site was too good at creating couples, and now everyone was leaving in droves, making him bankrupt. His crooked lawyer said destroying relationships was the only way to save the business. He pulled out a bazooka called the Couple Corral Break Up You Later and aimed at CJ. Mordecai pushed her out of the way, and the missile exploded into the pier. Mordecai's body rolled onto the beach, lying lifeless with bruises, scrapes, messed up hair, and torn suit while holding CJ's gift. CJ turned into a giant gray storm cloud and screamed for McIntyre to leave them alone. Lightning struck the pier under McIntyre's car, which fell onto a gas tank and exploded. The car's bullhorn-shaped hood ornament flew into McIntyre's blimp, rupturing it. The blimp plummeted toward his submarine as McIntyre screamed, "Hubris!" An explosion destroyed both vehicles and killed him. CJ cried over Mordecai's body until her tears brought him back to consciousness. The charm bracelet had been welded into a single heart-shaped charm by the bazooka blast, which CJ loved. The evil was capitalism weaponized against human connection. McIntyre built a business helping people find relationships, then realized successful relationships destroyed his revenue stream. He chose to literally murder people rather than accept that his business model was unsustainable. The breakupulator was corporate violence made literal, a weapon designed specifically to separate couples. His stalking showed how companies refuse to accept when customers leave, harassing them with increasingly aggressive retention tactics. The tragedy was McIntyre destroyed himself through his own business philosophy. He had the blimp, submarine, car, and weaponry showing he'd made millions of dollars. He could have retired rich or pivoted to a different business model. Instead, his crooked lawyer convinced him that destroying relationships was the only solution. His final word, hubris, showed he understood his own downfall. Excessive pride in his corporate empire led him to believe he could control people's romantic lives through violence. Matchmaker McIntyre weaponized capitalism against love, while future Mordecai became his own villain through jealousy. Both showed how obsession, whether with profit or pride, can destroy relationships. Future Mordecai and Rigby. In the two-part special Rigby's Graduation Day, future Mordecai and future Rigby never appeared, but Mordecai served as his own villain through jealousy and resentment toward Rigby's success. Mordecai sabotaged Rigby's graduation preparation by refusing to help with his speech, getting angry at Rigby's accomplishments, and deliberately failing to deliver the caffeine soda Rigby loved. The villainy was internal. Mordecai's inability to handle seeing his best friend succeed when Mordecai felt like a failure himself. The crisis started when Rigby prepared for his high school graduation ceremony. He'd spent the entire year working hard to get his diploma after dropping out years ago. Principal Dean told Rigby he'd be giving the graduation speech on the television program Inspire America, a show featuring inspirational stories where everyone cries and dances. Rigby had until tomorrow to prepare the speech. He showed Mordecai, Margaret, and Eileen his opening, riding a scooter while wearing a helmet with sparklers on top and speaking through a microphone on a boombox. Rigby's entrance failed when the microphone cord ran out of length, causing him to trip and fall. His actual speech content only consisted of asking if people were ready to be inspired, with his outro involving dropping the microphone, throwing a smoke bomb, and saying, "Peace out!" Margaret, Eileen, and Mordecai all agreed the speech wasn't good. Mordecai bluntly said, "Not good, man," while the others gave constructive criticism. Rigby panicked about having nothing prepared. The tension built when the park workers gathered to plan Rigby's graduation party. Mordecai showed up late while everyone else collected Rigby's favorite things. Skips explained they needed Rigby's favorite foods and beverages. Muscle Man asked what Rigby liked, and Mordecai mentioned Caffini, a fancy seasonal coffee soda. Skips told Mordecai to take his van and drive to the Caffini outlet to get it. Mordecai complained it was seasonal and he'd have to drive all the way out to the outlet, asking if all this was really necessary since graduating high school was the least a person could accomplish. High Five Ghost said it was a big deal for Rigby. Muscle Man told Mordecai that Rigby was his best friend. Mordecai exasperatedly sighed and sarcastically said he'd be back in a really long time. Muscle Man asked what was with him. The jealousy showed when Rigby had mentioned earlier that at the rate he was going, he'd probably get his college degree before Mordecai got his. Mordecai had weakly laughed, realizing Rigby was right. Rigby called Mordecai while he was driving through the desert, freaking out because all his speeches were junk and he was running out of time. Rigby noticed all his favorite stuff was gone from their room and asked where Mordecai was. Mordecai sighed and said he really couldn't do this right now because he was busy. Rigby asked what he should do. Mordecai resentfully told him he didn't know, and since Rigby was so smart now, why didn't he go listen to a sad song and figure it out? Rigby was taken aback, asking what was wrong. Mordecai hung up. The villainy emerged through passive-aggressive sabotage. Mordecai drove to the Caffini outlet, knowing Rigby desperately needed his help with the graduation speech. He chose to prioritize buying soda over supporting his best friend during a crisis. When Rigby called asking for help, Mordecai responded with hostility and sarcasm. He suggested Rigby listen to sad music to solve his problems, advice that was both unhelpful and mean-spirited. Mordecai hung up on Rigby, leaving him alone when he needed support most. A montage played to Here Comes a Regular by The Replacements, showing Rigby struggling alone. He watched videos of great speeches while taking notes, but his drafts were terrible and he threw them in the trash. Benson ate miserably at Wing Kingdom, ordering bucket after bucket. Rigby practiced his speech in front of Skips, Pops, and High Five Ghost, who shook their heads indicating it wasn't good. Mordecai drove across the desert passing road signs. Going nowhere? Life in a rut? Feel like a loser? And finally, an Inspire America billboard with Rigby's photo, which made Mordecai angry. A tumbleweed popped Mordecai's front tire, forcing him to stop. He stepped out, coughing from exhaust, and saw a sign saying, Caffini Outlet, 2 miles. He walked the rest of the way, only to find the store closed until 5 a.m. Tired and frustrated, he grabbed newspaper as a makeshift blanket and slept in front of the entrance. Rigby visited the Hall of Great Orators Museum and stared at a statue of a college valedictorian, imagining himself in that position. The graduation ceremony arrived, and Rigby's speech was a disaster. He rode in on a motor scooter wearing a banana costume, lost control, knocked over several graduates, and injured Eileen. Flannery Shedlawn held a microphone to Rigby, asking him to inspire them. Rigby panicked, stammering incoherently. The audience jeered. Rigby had a nightmare where Principal Dean ate his diploma. He woke up in bed covered in night sweat from his anxiety dream. Rigby called Mordecai, asking why he still wasn't back. Mordecai said he just had stuff to do. Rigby pointed out Mordecai already said he had stuff to do, and asked if he was done yet. Mordecai said no. Rigby asked what could be more important than this. Mordecai told Rigby he had to do this for himself and couldn't rely on Mordecai to do everything for him. Rigby exploded, saying he'd been doing stuff for himself all spring and hadn't needed help all spring. Now the one time he did need help, Mordecai wasn't doing anything for him at all. Mordecai finally had enough and admitted that was right. He wasn't doing anything for Rigby. He hung up and threw the pack of Caffini cans out the driver's window in a turbulent display of anger, jealousy, and feeling unappreciated. The evil was Mordecai becoming his own worst enemy by projecting his insecurities onto Rigby. Mordecai felt like a failure because he dropped out of art school and was working at the park with no clear future. Seeing Rigby graduate high school made Mordecai feel worse about himself. At the actual graduation ceremony, Rigby's speech started terribly. He stammered and forgot his punchlines. Principal Dean looked ready to snap. The audience murmured in confusion. Mordecai sat outside in his van listening, visibly cringing at Rigby's struggle. He looked guilty and pitiful, hearing his best friend's public embarrassment. Backstage, Rigby hugged his tail, whimpering softly. The sound of a soda can opening brought his attention. Mordecai had arrived with the Caffini. Mordecai admitted he'd been mad at Rigby because it was hard to see him doing so great. Mordecai said he'd always liked that he was doing better than Rigby before. He realized how unfair he was being when he heard Rigby embarrassing himself on stage. Mordecai said it was awesome that Rigby worked so hard to get here, and told him he was graduating today. Rigby realized what this meant and stood up with restored confidence. Mordecai started to say that if Rigby could do this, then that meant something. But Rigby interrupted and said, "Let me." Rigby returned to the stage and delivered an inspirational speech about how he wasn't good at most things, including high school, but he wanted to accomplish something. He talked about scaling cave walls, going to China, and beating someone in a takeout food race. His key message was that once you do hard stuff, it becomes not that hard. He said he could still have fun while being better than he used to be. He credited Eileen, Mordecai, his parents, and even his brother Don for lifting him up and showing him it's possible to do great hard things. The tragedy was, Mordecai almost destroyed Rigby's biggest accomplishment through his own insecurity. Rigby needed one thing: support from his best friend, and Mordecai refused to give it because of jealousy. The fact that Mordecai eventually came through showed growth, but he'd already caused significant damage. Rigby suffered alone for hours, nearly failed his graduation speech, and had a nightmare about disappointing everyone. All because Mordecai couldn't handle his own feelings of inadequacy. The commentary on toxic friendship showed how people sabotage those closest to them. Mordecai and Rigby were best friends who did everything together. When Rigby started improving himself and achieving goals, Mordecai felt threatened rather than proud. Instead of supporting Rigby's growth, Mordecai undermined it. The jealousy revealed Mordecai had been comfortable being better than Rigby, and losing that dynamic made him question his own worth. The resolution showed genuine character growth. Mordecai admitted his jealousy, apologized for his behavior, and told Rigby he was proud of him. He gave Rigby the confidence boost needed to deliver a great speech. The Caffini represented the effort. Mordecai drove through the desert, waited overnight, fixed a flat tire, and brought back the seasonal soda because he knew it would mean something to Rigby. The physical journey mirrored Mordecai's emotional journey from resentment to support. Mordecai thought his jealousy was harmless, but his next choices would nearly ruin Rigby's biggest moment. Antipops. In the episode Space Escape, the park workers graduated from the Spark Initiative and prepared to terraform their first planet when Antipops launched an attack on the space tree. He was Pop's evil twin brother, a being of pure destruction who existed to balance Pop's pure creation. Antipops had been hunting Pops across the universe, and his introduction showed the full scale of the threat Regular Show had been building toward since the beginning of Season 8. He was the embodiment of entropy itself, destined to fight Pops every 14 billion years in a battle that always ended in mutual destruction and universal reset. The crisis in Space Escape started when Mordecai and Rigby stopped at Comet Stop for snacks. They peeked over an aisle and saw an armored soldier talking to the cashier, complaining that his boss would freak out if they were late for the attack on the space tree. A strange figure with a huge head like Pop's approached the door and melted it down. He floated to the cash register while Mordecai and Rigby watched with wide eyes. The figure had the soldier get him a cherry space slushie, then waved his hand to make the panicked cashier flicker away into whiteness, erasing him from existence. Colonel Rawls announced an emergency graduation over the space tree intercom, ordering everyone to get to their rendezvous points immediately. An unknown ship docked with the space tree, and 4 figures breached security: a robot with a blaster, an ape-like alien, a lizard-like creature, and a humanoid with a laser rifle. Armored soldiers captured all Space Tree personnel and cadets. A large, sinister spaceship attached to the space tree with smaller ships surrounding it. Rawls ordered the park crew to protect Pops and get him off the space tree. Antipops revealed himself by floating above the mountain's peak during the final confrontation. He had the same round head as Pops, wore dark clothing, and radiated negative energy. His eyes glowed with malice, and his voice dripped with contempt. When the park crew tried to escape, Anti-Pops's erasing beam began spreading across the asteroid they were on. The dome barely escaped as Anti-Pops completely erased the asteroid from existence. The scale of destruction showed this wasn't a typical regular show villain. Anti-Pops could literally delete matter from reality with a gesture. In the episode The Dream Warrior, Anti-Pops invaded Pops's dreams, using a nightmare alien named Carl to discover Pops's location. The nightmare alien asked Pops to fill out a form with his name and address, returning repeatedly in different disguises. First as an unnamed creature, then disguised as Dr. Sweet Dreams from a relaxation tape, then manifesting inside Pop's cartoon dreams. Each time, the alien tried to extract location information from Pops. When Pops finally stood up to the nightmare alien in his dream, he revealed that Anti-Pops had hired him. The episode showed Anti-Pops' methodology. He manipulated others, used psychological warfare, and exploited weaknesses. His lair contained reviewing websites where he left 1-star ratings for businesses he'd never visited, showing how his negativity infected everything he touched. When Carl returned with Pops's location, Anti-Pops laughed evilly and said, bad show indeed." The revelation that Anti-Pops had been orchestrating events from the shadows elevated him from physical threat to strategic mastermind. In the episode Kill 'Em with Kindness, Pops completed his training and gained incredible powers: cryokinesis, teleportation, telepathy, protective walls made of positive energy, and the ability to transform matter. Earl revealed they needed to find the Seer on planet Nielsen to learn when, where, and how Pops would fight Anti-Pops. Pops didn't want to fight his brother and believed they could resolve their dispute peacefully. He telepathically entered Anti-Pop's mind to arrange a meeting. Anti-Pops pretended to consider peace, suggesting they meet at his underground dungeon on a sulfuric lava planet. When Pops asked for a public place instead, Anti-Pops agreed and gave him coordinates. They met at a public arcade on an asteroid. Anti-Pops led Pops to a closet and revealed he'd never been serious about peace. He said if everyone had everything they wanted, why would they need Santa? He wanted to destroy the universe because it offered him nothing. The fight in Kill 'Em with Kindness demonstrated both brothers' power. Pops used positive energy to create shields, regenerate objects, and defend against attacks. Anti-Pops used negative energy to erase things from existence, summon black hands that transformed into snakeheads, and fire erasing beams. When Pops tried to hug Anti-Pops, his brother shoved him away and said he didn't need a hug. The fight escalated until Earl intervened, holding off Anti-Pops while the park crew escaped. Anti-Pops erased Earl from existence, followed by the entire arcade and asteroid. The 4-part finale, A Regular Epic Final Battle, revealed the full scope of the conflict. The Guardian of Lollyland explained that Anti-Pops and Pops, whose real names were Malum Cranus and Mega Cranus, had fought every 14 billion years throughout history. Every battle ended in mutually assured destruction followed by a reset of the universe. Only Lollyland survived to record each encounter. Ancient tapestries showed every previous clash, including versions where the park workers appeared in different forms, wielding weapons while in armor. The evil of Anti-Pops was existential rather than personal. He didn't hate Pops specifically. He hated existence itself. When he terraformed areas for destruction, he fertilized them with negativity. His erasing beam removed things from having ever existed. His army consisted of beings who'd given up hope and embraced nihilism. His Titan form dwarfed planets, and his power grew as he erased more of reality. Each deletion fed his strength, creating a feedback loop where destruction begat more destruction. The final battle showed the full horror of Anti-Pop's power. He erased Muscle Man and High Five Ghost, who shared one final "my mom" joke and high five before disappearing. He erased Chance Sure-Shot, Toothpick Sally, and Recap Robot. He erased the Guardians of Eternal Youth, Gary, Death, Carter and Briggs, and Party Horse. He erased the Baby Ducks and their older brother Andy. He erased Skips, Eileen, and Benson. Each deletion was permanent and absolute. These weren't defeats that could be reversed. Anti-Pops was winning. The tragedy was that Anti-Pops existed because Pops existed. The universe required balance. Pure creation demanded pure destruction. Neither brother could exist without the other. The tapestries showed this cycle had repeated countless times across billions of years. Different versions of them born over billions of years, never quite right until Mega Cranus was created as the ultimate being. The universe balanced itself by creating Malum Cranus. They were cosmic twins locked in eternal conflict. The resolution came when Pops remembered what the Seer told him. Sometimes, doing something different makes all the difference. Instead of fighting, Pops hugged Anti-Pops. The embrace filled Anti-Pops with positive feelings, shrinking him back to regular size. Anti-Pops said this couldn't work because the minute Pops let go, he'd blast him into nothing. Pops said he knew, so he wasn't going to let go. They floated toward the sun together. Anti-Pops realized they would both die and called Pops a fool. Pops telepathically told Mordecai and Rigby not to worry because this was a happy ending. Anti-Pops' negativity disappeared as they approached the sun. He looked down in shame and guilt, wishing he could take back all his one-star reviews. Pops told him he could try, and they could do it together, as brothers. Anti-Pops opened his eyes one last time to look at his twin brother in admiration. They shared a final hug, indicating they'd finally made peace. They flew into the sun, killing both of them and reviving everyone Anti-Pops had destroyed. The villainy of Anti-Pops was the inevitability of entropy. Everything that exists must eventually end. Every creation contains the seeds of its destruction. Anti-Pops represented the heat death of the universe. The second law of thermodynamics made flesh, the mathematical certainty that all systems tend toward chaos. He left one-star reviews because he believed everything deserved criticism. He erased things from existence because he thought non-existence was superior to flawed existence. The redemption showed that even cosmic evil could be saved through love and sacrifice. Anti-Pops spent billions of years destroying universes because he felt the universe offered him nothing. In his final moments, Pops offered him brotherhood, forgiveness, and the chance to make peace. Anti-Pops accepted not because he was defeated. He accepted because he finally understood what he'd been missing. The hug literally saved the universe by breaking the cycle of mutual destruction. The four-part finale structure allowed the show to explore every aspect of Anti-Pops as a villain. Part 1 showed his overwhelming power and willingness to cheat. Part 2 demonstrated his army and resources. Part 3 revealed the full horror of his erasing beam and the deaths of beloved characters. Part 4 provided the emotional resolution where love conquered hate, creation overcame destruction, and two brothers found peace after billions of years of conflict. The commentary on cycles of violence showed how breaking patterns requires sacrifice. Every previous battle ended the same way, two fists colliding, resetting the universe. Pops chose to hug instead of punch. That single decision, that one moment of choosing love over violence, ended a cycle that had lasted since the beginning of time. Anti-Pops was the ultimate regular show villain because defeating him required losing Pops, and because his existence posed the question, if the universe requires balance between creation and destruction, can good ever truly triumph over evil? Anti-Pops threatened the very fabric of reality, but the next villain would show how good intentions can turn dangerously wrong. Quilgen. In the two-part special, the Christmas special, Quilgen was Santa's lead toy designer who created a magical box that gave children whatever they desired most. When Santa ordered the box destroyed because it brought out the worst in people through dark magic, Quilgen returned for revenge by stealing it and attempting to use its power to destroy Christmas forever. He represented the corruption of good intentions, someone who genuinely wanted to bring joy through innovation but couldn't accept that his creation was fundamentally dangerous. The crisis started when Santa crash-landed through Skip's garage on Christmas Eve. He was shot and injured, carrying a big red present. He told Mordecai and Rigby about Quilgen's betrayal, explaining that the box itself mattered more than what was inside. Quilgen had approached Santa months ago, excited about a breakthrough, an empty box that, when opened, would give the child what they desired most. The key component was dark magic. They tested it with a focus group in a Christmas morning scenario, and things got ugly. The box had power over people and turned the family evil. Santa ordered the box locked away and all work pertaining to it destroyed. Quilgen came back for revenge and shot Santa 3 times in the stomach, causing him to fall 3,500 feet and crash through the garage. Santa told Mordecai and Rigby that Quilgen wouldn't stop until he got the box back, and if he succeeded, he'd use its power to get what he wanted most, the destruction of Christmas forever. Santa passed out, and when the park crew returned to check on him, he was gone. When Benson opened the box to prove it was empty, everyone fought over it. The box's power activated, making them all evil and desperate to possess it. Muscle Man wouldn't give it back to Rigby. High Five Ghost took it from Muscle Man. Pops took it from High Five Ghost. Mordecai ended up with it, and they all fought until Skips ended it by yelling, "Enough!" Everyone turned back to normal, confused about what just happened. The box demonstrated its danger. Even brief exposure corrupted good people into fighting their friends. Skips examined the box and determined it was made from dark magic, meaning it couldn't be destroyed by normal methods. It had to be taken deep beneath the earth and cast into fiery molten lava. The only lava pit was in an abandoned mine shaft on the other side of East Pines Park. The park workers traveled there and accidentally triggered an alarm by pulling a snowman's carrot nose. Gene and the East Pines employees appeared with weapons, thinking it was another prank from the prank war. Gene tied up the park workers and opened the box despite their warnings. He and his employee Larry fought over it, demonstrating again how the box corrupted everyone who saw inside it. Mordecai convinced Gene to help by explaining that if the box fell into the wrong hands, it could mean the end of Christmas forever. Gene looked at a picture of his family at Christmas and agreed. Just then, the security cameras showed Quilgen and his men attacking East Pines employees, trying to force their way inside. The villainy emerged through Quilgen's obsession. He wasn't evil for evil's sake. He genuinely believed his invention could bring joy to children worldwide. His logic made sense. If everyone had a box that gave them what they wanted most, no one would fight over presents. He asked Santa if he'd ever thought of that, then answered his own question. Of course Santa had thought of it. Quilgen realized that if everyone had everything they wanted, they wouldn't need Santa anymore. His revenge was about being replaced and having his life's work destroyed. The park workers and Gene rode snowmobiles to the abandoned mine shaft. Gene warned them about booby traps and left to hold off Quilgen. Inside the mine shaft, they encountered 3 trials. The first required stepping on tiles in a specific pattern shown in drawings on the wall. Middle, left, middle, up, right, down. Muscle Man completed it, despite ice spikes nearly penetrating him. The second trial was a pinball machine where Benson had to rack up points to create an ice bridge while Quilgen's people attacked from behind. The final trial required wrestling a polar bear. Pops volunteered and fought the bear despite it being much larger and stronger. The bear threw Pops to the ground, grabbed him, and pushed him down. Everyone thought Pops wouldn't make it. Pops pushed himself back up and told the bear this was a match it couldn't win. He forced the bear to the ground, choking its neck until it gave up. The bear congratulated them for proving themselves worthy and opened a hole in its chest containing a tunnel to the lava pit. At the lava pit, Quilgen appeared pointing a gun at them. He'd used the stairs while they completed the trials. He demanded the box back, saying their luck had run out. Benson told Mordecai to give him the box since Quilgen had a gun. As Mordecai walked over to hand it over, an invisible force hit Quilgen and threw his gun into the lava. Santa appeared out of an invisibility cloak, revealing he'd been wearing a bulletproof vest under his clothes and was only stunned, not dead. Quilgen threw a grenade that exploded, sliding the gift to him. He picked it up and delivered his villain speech about how if they'd made a box for everyone, no one would be fighting over them. He accused Santa of ruining it because if everyone had everything they wanted, they wouldn't need Santa. Santa tried to tell him it wasn't like that. Quilgen cut him off and opened the box. He demanded what he desired most: the destruction of Christmas forever. The box granted his wish by making TNT appear in Christmas decorations all over the world. A detonator appeared inside the gift. Quilgen laughed evilly and said one push would make it all gone. Mordecai ran into him, and they fell toward the lava pit. Rigby jumped after them. In midair, Mordecai and Quilgen fought while Rigby grabbed the box. The present changed back and forth from the detonator to an ice cream cone, showing the box was still trying to give Rigby what he wanted. Rigby gave the box to Mordecai, who pulled out a hoverboard for them to ride. Quilgen and the box fell into the lava pit, killing him and destroying the box in the process. The TNT disappeared from Christmas decorations worldwide. Christmas was saved. The evil of Quilgen was the tragedy of good intentions corrupted by rejection and spite. He'd created something innovative that could genuinely help children. He'd used dark magic without fully understanding the consequences. When Santa destroyed his work, Quilgen couldn't accept that his invention was fundamentally dangerous. He chose revenge over accepting that some ideas shouldn't exist. The commentary on innovation without ethics showed how creating something powerful doesn't mean it should be created. Quilgen saw the box as progress. Why shouldn't children get exactly what they want? He didn't consider that desire without limit corrupts people. The focus group turning evil didn't convince him the box was wrong. It convinced him Santa was jealous. His belief that Santa destroyed the box to maintain relevance revealed how inventors can become blind to their creation's dangers when they feel threatened. Quilgen's obsession with his corrupted invention threatened Christmas itself. But the next threat would show nature refusing to be controlled. The Canadian geese. In the episode A Bunch of Full-Grown Geese, 4 fully grown Canadian geese terrorized the park's lakeside, attacking visitors, destroying property, and ruining the hoagie sandwich Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops were making. When Skips refused to help because geese were too dangerous, Mordecai and Rigby called the baby ducks for advice. The geese transformed into a giant four-headed robot and revealed they were terraforming the lake for their own kind, having removed all non-goose life forms and fertilized the soil. They represented nature as an unstoppable force. When wildlife decides to fight back, humanity's weapons become useless. The villainy started when the geese showed up on the bridge and began their attack. They scared a couple away, pushed a squirrel off the bridge, and dropped a giant rock on a paddle boat, breaking it and sending the couple into the lake. Two geese chest-pounded each other in celebration. When Pops tried to reason with them, telling them their behavior was uncouth, the geese pushed him around until he ran away sobbing. Rigby yelled for them to quit it. The geese stared at the hoagie sandwich, and Rigby realized what they wanted. The geese attacked the sandwich and threw it in the trash can. Rigby sobbed, asking why they would do this. The geese punched the trash can repeatedly, smashing it in the process, then rolled it toward Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops, where it collided with another trash can and sent garbage flying everywhere. The casual cruelty showed the geese enjoyed destruction. They didn't need to destroy the sandwich or pulverize the trash can. They chose violence because violence was their nature. Benson ordered Mordecai and Rigby to get rid of the geese, saying he had a couple of guys who would take care of the problem, Mordecai and Rigby themselves. When they protested that the geese were terrifying, Benson threatened to fire them. Rigby Benson always made that threat and was all talk. Benson became furious, screaming and chasing them out of his office. The threat was established. These geese were dangerous enough that even Benson acknowledged it. He still forced his employees to deal with them. Mordecai and Rigby tried waving blankets at the geese while screaming. The blankets worked initially. The geese snatched them away, turned them into whips, and started whipping the duo. They tried using geese repellent called Get Gone Geese with a hose attached. The goose in front of Rigby picked up the hose with its beak and sprayed the repellent on him. Mordecai complained it smelled like rotten eggs. The other geese attacked. One pushed Mordecai down while others attacked Rigby until Mordecai pulled him away. Skips refused to help because geese were too dangerous. He suggested using ducks since geese and ducks were natural enemies. Mordecai called the baby ducks for advice. The baby ducks said to use lasers because geese hate them, singing their signature song about shining lasers in the geese's faces and watching them run away. Mordecai and Rigby hid in bushes with laser pointers and shined them on the geese. 3 geese flew away following the lasers. The 4th stayed behind and ambushed them from the bush. The evil escalated when the geese threw a tree on Mordecai and Rigby. Just as they thought lasers were supposed to work, the baby ducks appeared with a giant green laser that blasted the tree. The baby ducks confronted the geese, telling them the lake wasn't theirs and to leave now. The geese's eyes glowed red, and one spoke in a very deep voice. It said no, they were terraforming the lake for their own kind. They'd removed all non-goose life forms and fertilized the soil. The lake was theirs, and if the ducks wanted it, they'd have to take it by force. The geese transformed into a giant four-headed goose robot by glowing red, posing multiple times, and flying up to merge. The baby ducks fist-pumped and formed Duckman. The 2 giants prepared to fight. The goose monster fired Scrabble missiles at them. Duckman blocked them and flew toward the goose monster, got shocked by electricity. Duckman chopped off the metal shocker, got blasted backward. Duckman's laser had no effect. When Duckman charged, he flew directly into a large energy sphere that knocked him down. The goose monster grabbed a tree near the house, knocked off the top, threw it in the sky, and destroyed it with Scrabble missiles. The monster blasted parts of the house, including Mordecai and Rigby's room. It grabbed their television, called it standard definition, said destroying it was doing them a favor, threw it in the sky, and obliterated it with missiles. The commentary on outdated technology added dark humor. The geese were making fun of Mordecai and Rigby's poverty while doing it. Mordecai and Rigby fist-pumped with everything they had, sending a ray of light into the sky. Their video game console, gaming fists, shoes, and shorts emerged from their destroyed room, and merged with Duckman as The Touch by Stan Bush played. Duckman used Sonic Shield to block attacks, Rocket Fist to punch the goose monster backward, and power-diverted shoes to jump and beat down the monster. He punched a hole through it, fired musical notes, flew high, and drew the power sword. The final attack involved manual sword control using video game controllers. Duckman charged toward the goose monster while Mordecai and Rigby controlled the movement, spinning the sword in circles to cut the monster apart. It turned back into the 4 geese who were zapped and beaten down. One goose delivered the final villain speech. "Fools! The game of Duck, Duck, Goose will never end! There will be future lakes! Future sandwiches to ruin. Duckman's arm glowed and slammed down on the geese, completely destroying them. The evil was environmental terrorism disguised as territorial behavior. The geese wanted to terraform it specifically for geese by removing all other life. The fertilization of soil referenced how geese defecate everywhere, turning beautiful parks into guano-covered wastelands. The transformation into a giant robot showed this wasn't random animal aggression. It was coordinated military invasion. The Scrabble missiles were weaponized language, each missile featuring letters, representing how geese honk aggressively to communicate threats. The commentary on nature fighting back showed humanity's helplessness against organized wildlife. Blankets didn't work. Geese repellent backfired. Laser pointers only worked on 3 out of 4. Every human solution failed because the geese anticipated and countered them. The only effective response was calling bigger, more powerful birds to fight on humanity's behalf. The park workers couldn't save themselves. They needed Duckman, and even then barely won. When Mother Duck scolded Benson for yelling at her children, it showed the power dynamic had permanently shifted. Benson apologized to a duck. Thanks for sticking around. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. It's free and helps us keep making more content you'll love.